Chapter 1310. Han Fei pretended to be furious. Zhang Xiaotian looked at Han Fei calmly with a faint smile on his face, as if waiting for Han Fei to continue. Zhang Xiaotian's strength was exactly what Han Fei wanted. This time, he had to be defeated. There were two benefits. Firstly, he wouldn't have to take over Zhang Xiaotian's position. Now, even if he was in the eye of the storm, as long as he wasn't the strongest, he wouldn't be targeted by others, just like Qing, Xiling, and the others. Secondly, he could use this as an excuse to say that he had comprehended a lot, but his experience was not enough and that he needed to go out to train. This way, it would be easier for him to escape. Therefore, the stronger Zhang Xiaotian was, the more difficult the battle would be, which was in line with Han Fei's plan. So, Han Fei fought again. Out of the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes, he only needed to use 300 strikes to prevent himself from accidentally winning. Based on the strength that Zhang Xiaotian had displayed, it was unlikely that his Monkey King 3,000 whips would be able to hit him. Sure enough, even though Han Fei used the closed distance technique, the Monkey King 3,000 strikes and the God-stunning spike, he could only fight Zhang Xiaotian. Bang, bang, bang. The people below could see the sounds of explosions coming from the arena from time to time. That was the result of repeated mental attacks colliding with each other. However, unlike the previous times, Han Fei could only defend against Zhang Xiaotian's spiritual shock. Although Han Fei didn't use his strongest soul attack, after a round of battle, Han Fei clearly discovered that even if he went all out, his soul was still slightly weaker than Zhang Xiaotian's. Han Fei couldn't help but be secretly shocked. If his guess was correct, Zhang Xiaotian's soul was almost as strong as his own. This person is extraordinary. Han Fei realized that there were always a few talented people among the billions of creatures. If Zhang Xiaotian was at the same cultivation realm as him, the latter's soul would probably be as powerful as his soul before he split into two halves. It might even be higher. At this moment, a big eye midair was staring at Han Fei, which gave Han Fei goosebumps. This thing looked like the eye of the heavenly path. Fortunately, this was not the real eye of the heavenly path. Otherwise, how could Han Fei hide? The old turtle said, "Among the great techniques in the world, the eye technique is one of the most mysterious. This person's eye technique can see through most of your actions. If my guess is correct, he should even be able to see through the way your demonic aura operates." Han Fei thought to himself, "My yin-yang divine eyes are also good." However, he still replied, "Anyway, he can't tell that I'm a human. I'm a pure sea demon now." It was true that Zhang Xiaotian couldn't tell that Han Fei was a human being, but he vaguely felt that there was something wrong with Han Fei's vitality. His qi and blood were too strong and overbearing. But at this moment, the way he was bleeding from his 7 orifices did not give off the feeling that his qi and blood were vigorous. To confirm his guess, Zhang Xiaotian suddenly shouted, "Fish Dragon King, take my 9 spears." Han Fei frowned. He seemed to have some impression of 9 spears. Zhang Xiaotian stretched out a finger, and a blood-colored spear materialized in the air. Han Fei was intrigued by the spear. He remembered that Zhang Xiaotian seemed to have a divine skill, 9 spears. However, there had never been a person of the same level who could make him use more than the 5th spear. It could even be said that the number of people who forced him to use his 9 spears could be counted on one hand. Han Fei's heart sank. It seemed that his acting had indeed come to an end. However, all the onlookers present exclaimed one after another. Someone exclaimed, 9 blood-colored spears. This ultimate skill is starting to appear? Someone was stunned. Is the Fish Dragon King really so strong now? Has Zhang Xiaotian been forced to use his ultimate skill, 9 blood-colored spears? Many venerables scanned him with their perception, wondering how Han Fei would deal with it. Instant. Han Fei twisted his body and secretly increased his strength by 10%, making his pure strength reach nearly 70 waves. Under normal circumstances, such a terrifying strength was already the limit of a peak-level sea spirit. Even when Han Fei was at his peak, the strongest strength of a law enforcer was only 72 waves. Therefore, this attack could not only show his great potential, but also not weak. At least, Han Fei was sure that his spear couldn't be broken by Zhang Xiaoyan's spear. Otherwise, wouldn't this person be even more talented than him? Huh! Han Fei stretched out his hand, and with a faint dragon roar, the surrounding seawater trembled, and the spear was shot out. The water exploded, the space shattered, and cracks appeared. The corners of Zhang Xiaoyan's mouth twitched, and two red lights condensed into two blood-colored spears on both sides of his body and darted out. Han Fei was slightly alarmed. He broke my attack with only 3 spears. This person is more talented than Yu Chen. Bam! 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 In other people's eyes, Han Fei's spear had shattered 2 cracks in the void. When the third blood crack appeared, a huge hole appeared, and the power of both sides was annihilated at the same time. Han Fei pretended to be panting, but he didn't give up. He condensed another spear. This spear was like the drawing technique. The spear was like a knife, not a stab, but a spear light that swept out in an arc. Zhang Xiaoyan was a little surprised to see this attack. He seemed to be surprised that Han Fei could perform such an attack in such a short time. Not just Zhang Xiaoyan, but Prawn Yue and Green Silk Spirit also frowned. How many spears could the Fish Dragon King block? How dare he take the initiative to attack? Swish! One of Zhang Xiaoyan's hands turned into a giant tentacle, which straightened and thrust out again. Chilla, in everyone's eyes, Zhang Xiaoyan's spear was slowly torn apart by the power of Han Fei's spear. Huh? Zhang Xiaoyan was slightly surprised. Looking at the spear light that was clashing with his spear, he said casually, "Your spear light seems to have a very powerful ability to break techniques. Have you grasped a new power?" Han Fei was shocked. His attacks had always been enhanced by the invincible will. Therefore, he was used to using armor-piercing techniques. However, Zhang Xiaoyan was different. He was indeed a top heavenly talent. He would have such a feeling when his power collided with his opponent in a battle. As early as when Han Fei was still in the Blue Sea Town, when he was still using the Million Knife Art, he could already make people feel this way. Han Fei's face turned cold. Humph! The Dragon King's bloodline is already very powerful. I've only touched the surface. One day, I'll dig out all my potential. Han Fei didn't care. No matter what problems he had, he would just blame it on the Dragon King's bloodline. As he expected, Zhang Xiaoyan chuckled and blocked the terrifying blast with one hand. Looking at the domineering spear light that had broken his 4th spear, the center of his eyebrows suddenly opened. Red light glowed, and another bloody spear darted out. Someone exclaimed, "The 5th spear? It's already the 5th spear." Someone was shocked. This Fish Dragon King has forced Master Zhang Xiaoyan to use the 5th spear. How terrifying! However, it was Han Fei's turn to be shocked, because he found that the opponent's attack had gathered the energy from all directions. In an instant, the power of this spear surpassed that of his spear light. With a crack, the spear light was broken. Although he instinctively wanted to attack again, the old turtle said, "Enough. If you attack again, you'll be beyond the Fish Dragon King's limit. No matter how talented he is, he can't grow so fast. It's only been half a year." Han Fei was shocked. He wanted to try again, because Han Fei found that Zhang Xiaoyan was probably a top heavenly talent on the same level as him. The power of this spear alone was comparable to the sacrificing punch. He had to use the sacrificing punch with the full strength of a peak-level law enforcer to completely block it. But this was only the 5th spear, the 6th spear, the 7th spear. He hadn't blocked all 4 spears, which made Han Fei want to fight Zhang Xiaoyan with other strength. However, the big picture was more important. Han Fei immediately looked horrified. With a roar, he stepped back and used the closed distance technique. However, the opponent's spear was extremely fast. Even though Han Fei retreated, the spear in his hand didn't stop, and the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes smashed down. In the eyes of others, every time Han Fei attacked, blood flowed out of his arms, hands, and mouth. Phew! Someone heaved a long sigh of relief. Zhang Xiaoyan is still the invincible Zhang Xiaoyan. The Fish Dragon King is already so strong, but he was forced into such a state by a spear. Crack! Crack! Han Fei's skin was full of cracks. and his battle suit from his wrists to his shoulders was shattered. Both his arms were covered with blood stripes. Pooh! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. He tumbled hundreds of times in the seawater before he took the blow with trembling hands. However, he didn't seem to have the strength to fight anymore. Cough, cough. Han Fei's expression was solemn, and his voice was trembling. Why your strength has already reached the Tao-seeking state. Zhang Xiaotian didn't deny it. He put down his hands and looked at Han Fei quietly, but he still felt that something was wrong. He felt that Han Fei's qi and blood were behaving very strangely. However, he couldn't figure out what was wrong at all. Under the gaze of his third eye, the fish dragon king shouldn't be able to hide anything anymore. Was he really wrong? Zhang Xiaotian smiled and then said, "You are the fourth person to be able to take my fifth spear." Han Fei frowned and said in disbelief, "That's impossible. Why didn't I know that?" Zhang Xiaotian shrugged slightly. "Guess." When Zhang Xiaotian said this, a lot of people were puzzled. Someone was puzzled. The fish dragon king is the fourth, but why do I feel that it's the first? Someone scratched his head. That's impossible. I don't think any of the top 10 heavenly talents have been able to take Zhang Xiaotian's fifth spear, right? Suddenly, someone's heart skipped a beat. Could it be someone was confused? Who? That person slowly said, "The top 3 on the heavenly talent roll." Everyone, Prime Minister Turtle's voice trembled as he shouted. The fish dragon king challenged Master Zhang Xiaotian. Master Zhang Xiaotian won. Chapter 13:11. At the moment when Han Fei was defeated, he clearly felt that many senses moved away from him. The venerables must have withdrawn their gazes. Han Fei thought of something. That's the best result. In this way, I can negotiate with Changshuiken and find my own path. Then I can slip away. The old turtle said, "As far as I know about Gue Sanqing's soul, there aren't many battles between the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Just like there aren't many battles between the Cloud Sea Divine Tree and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. If you want to go out, you can only choose to go to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." The old turtle knew what Han Fei meant very well. Since the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, when Han Fei consciously helped the Blood Demon, the old turtle felt that there was something fishy about it. Han Fei seemed to want to go to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. At this moment, Han Fei said, "It doesn't matter. I just left an uncertain factor in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. The reason why I want to go there again is just to steal something." The old turtle asked, "Pure Yang fire?" Han Fei didn't comment. The pattern of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's Fire Sea had existed for tens of thousands of years. Even if he had a senior and junior relationship with the Life Queen, she might not necessarily give the power of the fire tree to him. Moreover, things like fortuitous encounters were usually fought for by oneself. The price of breaking into the Blood Sea Divine Wood City should be higher than that of the Baibei Royal City. If he had to become a woman and sneak in, Han Fei thought that he might not change. Unless he ate the red ball of the big red trunk, he would definitely become a male Millennium Snapper. However, he probably wouldn't be able to sneak in. Han Fei said, "Let's go out first. As long as I can go out, everything is possible. After all, I don't need the identity of the Fish Dragon King anymore." When thousands of eyes were focused on him, Han Fei stood proudly, even if the current him looked like he was heavily injured. However, with the Fish Dragon King's arrogance, for the sake of face and image, he had to pretend to be strong. At this moment, in the eyes of others, although Han Fei was defeated, it was still a glorious achievement. To be able to rise 3 ranks in a single battle and force Zhang Xiaotian to use his Crimson Fifth Spear was already an incredible feat. When Han Fei returned to his mansion under everyone's gaze, he saw a group of Tao-seeking state powerhouses standing there, waiting for him. At a glance, Han Fei even saw at least 2 demi-venerables, and the rest were all peak-level Tao-seeking experts. Only a few high-level Tao-seeking experts remained here. However, to Han Fei's surprise, it was not these experts, but Yu Kailing and Lan Shuer who were standing at the side and dared not say a word. Han Fei was slightly surprised. When did these 2 people come? Of course, Han Fei knew that Yu Kailing and Lan Shuer were the focus of the Ice God Gorgeous training, and they were selected to come here through the back door. However, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Newcomers were generally not qualified to enter the White Shell Kingdom. Usually, one would have to go through a trial assessment. Only by passing this trial assessment would one be qualified to become a member of the White Shell Royal City. This meant that from now on, the two of them would have to go through a trial every month. In addition to the trial, they could receive the welfare resources of the White Shell Royal City, trade in the Royal City, and get the techniques, combat skills, secret techniques, weapons, and so on that they wanted. The premise was that they had to survive every trial. With the pride of the Fish Dragon King, he should be indifferent to them under normal circumstances. Therefore, Han Fei didn't pay much attention to them. Master Dragon King. A voice came into Han Fei's mind. These people were also quite straightforward, especially the two demi-venerables. They cupped their hand to Han Fei. Master Dragon King, if you're willing, you can leave an opportunity for us. We will follow you to the peak of Tao-seeking, or we will become venerables. After all, they were demi-venerables, so they didn't flatter him. It was more like a deal. They came to find the Fish Dragon King just to leave an opportunity for him. However, as soon as the two of them said that, before the other peak-level Tao-seeking experts spoke, Han Fei waved his hand. I don't need more followers for the time being. Sanqing, see the guests out. The old turtle muttered in his heart. Does this be***starred really think of himself as a young master? I really want to slap him. However, who asked him to possess Gue Sanqing's body? And Gue Sanqing was a follower of the Fish Dragon King. At this time, he could only obey. The old turtle flashed to them from outside the mansion. Everyone please. My young master has just passed the trial field of the Forbidden Land and fought a series of battles. He is physically and mentally exhausted and needs to rest. Well, the faces of the two demi-venerables immediately darkened. Is this Fish Dragon King so inconsiderate? Was this still the way to treat a guest? A great demon at the peak level Tao-seeking expert cupped his hands and said goodbye. Resentfully, he cursed himself in his heart. If he had known what kind of person the Fish Dragon King was, he wouldn't have come here himself. Even the two demi-venerables didn't dare to say anything at this moment. No one knew what would happen to the Fish Dragon King in the future. Today he fought with Zhang Xiaotian so fiercely. It was possible that he could defeat Zhang Xiaotian in the future. If he offended him now, who knew if the Fish Dragon King would hold a grudge against him? Since Master Dragon King doesn't need us, we'll take our leave. Han Fei was so proud that he didn't even nod. Such a strong master wanted to be his follower? He had to think about how to kill the other party. If it were outside the Baibei Royal City, he would definitely accept all of them. The problem was that in this Baibei Royal City, it was not easy to enter, nor was it easy to leave. Only those who were truly outstanding would have the qualifications to be recommended. Furthermore, they had to have a venerable behind them to send them in through the back door. As for leaving, if it were so easy, Han Fei wouldn't have challenged Xin Yue and the others. The reason why the Fish Dragon King was sent to the front line last time was that he was in an awkward position with Yu Hong and the others. Chang Shui-Qin wanted to train them, let the three of them kill each other, stimulate their fighting spirit, and so on. If Han Fei wanted to go out again, he would have to have a good reason. Otherwise, those who were not venerables, especially heavenly talents like the Fish Dragon King, could only go out a limited number of times. Unless a top heavenly talent appeared in the Shuemu heaven and they needed to fight for it. It was like some kind of opportunity that they needed to fight for. In short, the purpose of cultivating talents in the Sea Demon Royal City was to raise people to the venerable realm. After these Tao-seeking state monsters left, Han Fei turned his eyes to Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer. Han Fei said casually, "Did you pass the trial?" Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer hurriedly cupped their hands. Master Dragon King, we were lucky to pass this trial. Han Fei nodded slightly and thought to himself, is it necessary to kill these two people? With Yu Kaling's serious attitude, once she determined that humans were enemies, she would definitely treat the Shuemu heaven as an enemy. However, Han Fei secretly smiled. Whatever, once I slip away in the future, these two guys who regard me as their backers will definitely be killed. At that time, I don't even need to do anything. Han Fei said indifferently. Sanqing, teach them how to enter the mansion. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion for a few days. Yes, young Master Dragon King. After Han Fei said that, he stepped into the mansion. After all, he was still dripping with blood at this moment. After a moment, the old turtle came to Han Fei's cultivation room, leaned against the door frame, and said, "Don't you want to kill these two little girls?" At this moment, Han Fei had already changed his clothes. His whole body was clean, as if he had been reborn. He was lying on the disgusting throne of the Fish Dragon King, holding a spiritual fruit in his hand and stuffing it into his mouth. Han Fei sneered. Don't worry. With the system of cultivating heavenly talents in the Baibei royal city, they may not survive, especially after I leave. At this moment, in a certain side hall in the mansion, seeing Gue Sanqing leave, Yukaling and Lan Shuer heaved a long sigh of relief. Then, the two of them looked at each other in shock. Lan Shuer said, Sister Kaling, is the Fish Dragon King so strong? I just heard that Zhang Xiaodian can basically be regarded as the top of the top 10 heavenly talents. The top 3 were all just nominal names. The Fish Dragon King is only half a level lower than Zhang Xiaodian. It doesn't look like it. Yukaling was also a little surprised. That battle just now was too fast. Although they all used the power of peak-level sea spirits, it was still difficult for us to see how they fought. I'm just wondering, if the Fish Dragon King is so strong, why was it sneak attacked? Lan Shuer immediately pulled Yukaling and said, Sister Kaling, I think there may be something wrong with the Fish Dragon King. When he was in my cave, he was not like this. This person is a bit lascivious. Yukaling twitched the corner of her mouth and rolled her eyes. He just came out of the trial field of the Forbidden Land and was so badly injured. How could he have sex with you? Do you know that the assessment we experienced is only the most ordinary assessment? And what he experienced was the top assessment. Even the Heavenly Talent List is an assessment that very few people dare to participate in. How could such a person really be charmed by beauty? Hearing Yukaling's words, Yukaling thought it made sense. However, she still felt a little strange. The Fish Dragon King was indeed a bit lascivious. Chapter 13:12. The next day, Han Fei was in the middle of cultivation. He didn't immediately go to the sea-quelling painting to find by Sujin and the others, nor did he enter Forge the Universe, but simply ate some spiritual fruits. The old turtle said, Come out for a moment. Someone is here to deliver something to you. Swish, Han Fei came to the door with a swish, put on a proud look, and walked out with his head held high. At the door, it was a big demon in the beginner Tao-seeking state. He said, Master Dragon King, as ordered by Venerable Changshui Qin, I brought you 12 level 3 soul crystals and a bottle of ownerless souls. Han Fei hummed softly and said lightly, Sanqing, take it. The old turtle thought to himself, Don't you have hands? Han Fei scoffed. Oh, now you're being tough? It seems that you still haven't given up your dignity as an emperor. The old turtle, teasing the old turtle, Han Fei was about to make an appointment with Changshui Qin so that he could find a way to ask for leave from this guy in the future. However, before Han Fei asked, the man said, Master Dragon King, Venerable Changshui also said that you did well this time. You did well this time, relying on your own strength to fight your way to the 5th rank of the Proud Son of Heaven ranking. So, he wants you to be prepared. In half a month, something big will happen. He wants you to recuperate, consolidate your strength, and improve your cultivation. Huh? Han Fei was stunned. What big thing? I'm about to leave, and you want to talk to me about something big? Han Fei raised his head and said, Do you know what it is? I've had a lot of insights recently, and I may need to cultivate in seclusion or other experiences soon. So, I'd better ask first. The man said, I don't know exactly what it is. However, it seems that the wall of death has been abnormal recently. It may be related to this. The old turtle said, Oh, could it be that the wall of death was destroyed? But it seems that only half of it went in. Han Fei was a little stunned. Damn it, my lotus root body is still there. It doesn't matter if the wall of death is broken, but the demon suppression tower can't be broken. That's an incarnation that water deity worked hard to condense for me. He had even sacrificed half of his divine soul power. Han Fei nodded slightly. I understand. After sending the guest back to his room, Han Fei re-entered the mansion. Because he was in control of the entire mansion, he immediately discovered that Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer were preparing to leave. It seemed to know that he had returned, so it quickly shrank back. Han Fei was speechless. Am I a scourge? So timid? How did he enter Bai Bei Royal City? However, Han Fei didn't seem to notice it and went straight back to the house with the old turtle. After confirming that Han Fei had returned to the hall of his mansion, Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer sneaked to the door hand in hand. Looking at this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but touch his nose. After thinking for a long time, he said indifferently, Old Yuan, do you think there's any way to secretly control these two people? The old turtle could not help but exclaim, Didn't you always look down on my devil path technique? Why are you asking me this now? Han Fei rolled his eyes and said, When did I say that I look down on demonic arts? Besides, is this a demonic art? Is controlling a person a demonic art? The old turtle grinned. Of course it doesn't count to me. It's just a very common technique. Anyone can do this as long as they're strong enough. Just like your soul control technique, strictly speaking, it's more demonic than my demonic arts, but you're using it too. Han Fei thought to himself, Since when is my divine manipulation technique a demonic art? That's nonsense. Han Fei said impatiently. Then do you have it or not? The old turtle said, yes. However, no matter how good the control technique is, it can't resist the control of people's hearts. For example, the way you control the Fish Dragon King is very good. Although it takes a long time, it's much better than direct control. This was especially true when you were strong enough to expand your seas and split open the heavens. At that point, you would realize that techniques that could directly control souls could only restrict them, but not their true thoughts. If you make any mistakes, there may be a backlash. Han Fei curled his lips. That's good. Tell me about it. I'll use it now. You've already said that it's opening the sea and opening the sky. They haven't even transcended the tribulation yet, so it's definitely useful. The old turtle nodded. That's true. If you just control them by force, it's easy to deal with them. You just need to take their essence blood and seal a wisp of their soul. Then you can put a wisp of their soul into their bodies, and they can die in a flash. Han Fei was stunned. This was a familiar method. It seemed that he had always used this trick when he blackmailed Master Hexagon Starfish. Han Fei was a little confused. So simple. The old turtle said, How difficult do you think it is? If you want to use it casually, this is the simplest way. Of course, if you don't want to use it casually, there are many other ways. For example, you can use the art of hypnosis, the art of soul devouring, the art of talismans, and the art of soul suppression. These can all be used to control others, but they may fail or be restrained. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Then is it possible for me to take their essence blood and put a wisp of their soul into their bodies to fail? The old turtle nodded. Yes. For example, if a king directly blocks the opportunity between you and them, you won't be able to kill them. Han Fei asked, What about venerables? Is there a way to block this opportunity? The old turtle thought for a moment. Some demi-kings can also do it. However, it is generally difficult for them to reach the venerable realm. You must know that the great methods in this world are common to all kings. However, there are extremely high restrictions on those below the king level. This is the difference in the level of life. You don't understand it yet. Han Fei curled his lips. Okay, give it to me. I need to restore my soul power. The resources sent by Chanshui Qin, the so-called ownerless souls, were only about 1/3 of Bai Sujan's will. After Han Fei swallowed all the ownerless souls, he despised the old turtle deeply. This is too little. It's not enough. The old turtle had been leaning against the door frame, secretly cultivating. After all, although this mansion was safe, the king could still spy on it. It was not certain that the king would give up the secret observation of the Bai Bei royal city after he recovered from his injuries. Therefore, Han Fei and the old turtle tacitly spoke in their hearts. On the surface, They were like master and servant, and there was nothing wrong with them. Hearing Han Fei's complaint, the old turtle said, "It's not that he didn't give enough. Think about it. If an ordinary Tao-seeking state expert gets so many ownerless souls, what will he think?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly. Of course, he would be overjoyed. For ordinary people, an increase of more than 400 points of soul power was probably not so much even if they advanced a small level. Thinking of this, Han Fei just shrugged casually. It was better than nothing. After all, he was not an ordinary Tao-seeking state expert. In addition to these ownerless souls, there were 12 level 3 soul crystals. Han Fei had used level 2 soul crystals before, but soul crystals were useful in the early stage, but not in the later stage. At this moment, the level 3 soul crystals didn't surprise Han Fei. After all, this was the Bai Bei Royal City, a holy land in the eyes of sea demons. There should be a peerless treasure vault. The number of experts who perished in these training grounds alone was not small. Therefore, the Bai Bei Royal City should not be short of things like soul crystals. At least, there should be no shortage of level 3 ones. Sure enough, the effect of the 12 soul crystals added up was only similar to that of the ownerless souls. The two added up only increased his soul power by less than 1,000 points, which was not as strong as the wisp of consciousness in Bai Sujin's mind. Of course, Han Fei didn't mind it at all. No matter how little it was still meat. These rewards didn't seem to be much, but if they were 10 times more, he would be able to slowly make up for the soul power he lost in a few days. At this moment, Han Fei looked at his 16,684 points of soul power and thought, there's still a long way to go. Based on the current situation, it would probably take 2 to 3 venerable soul power to barely make up for it. However, to hunt venerables now, for Han Fei, it was still too far away. 7 days later, Han Fei did consolidate his soul power. Although the ownerless souls were eaten quickly, it would still take some time to digest them if he wanted to really use them. On this day, someone came to deliver a message from Changshuikin. The location was the trial field. When Han Fei arrived, he found that the top 10 of the heavenly talent list, including Zhang Xiaotian, were all present. There were also some other people outside the top 10, and there were nearly 20 people in total. Changshuikin said, "Okay, everyone is here. Now, I'll announce your new assessment next month." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. A new assessment? So many heavenly talents are coming together? Is it very difficult? Changshuikin said, "A few days ago, the demon suppression tower in the forbidden area of the Bai Bei Royal City moved. For some special reasons, a seal inside the Wall of Death was exposed. Near the Wall of Death, an island appeared. After the investigation and exploration of many venerables, most of the dangers have been eliminated. However, there are still many fortuitous encounters, so you can have a chance to explore." Wow! Hearing this, everyone was refreshed. An island that came out of the Wall of Death. It was like listening to a book from heaven. They could understand the existence of an island, but they had never seen one. However, whether it was an island or not was not the key. The key was that it came out of the Wall of Death. This made people yearn for it. How many people had peeped to the Wall of Death since ancient times? And no one could really get any benefits from it. Now, they had never thought that such an opportunity would fall on their heads. Even Han Fei was quite surprised. Has a part of the Wall of Death been opened? Changshuikin said, "Don't be too happy too early. People from Shuimutian and the Bloodsea Divinewood City are going with you. This is still a 3-way exploration." As he spoke, Changshuikin looked to Han Fei and seemed to be warning him. The Fish Dragon King may know that when we were in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, the Bai Bei Royal City didn't gain any advantage. Or, you might have obtained a fortuitous encounter, but most people perished there. But this time, the main body made it clear that everyone must work together on this trip. The opportunity is in your own hands. I and the Venerables will watch the battle in person. My request is, don't lose. Chapter 13:13. Han Fei accurately grasped some of the words. Changshuikin and the others would watch the battle in person. That meant that both the Shuimu Heaven and the Bloodsea Divine City would come, and there would be Venerables watching the battle in person. At that time, what should he do as the Fish Dragon King? However, on second thought, the Life Queen already knew that he had sneaked into the Bai royal city, so she should have some guesses about the Demon Sealing Pagoda. After all, the Life Queen was very clear about the Water Fairy's strength. There was another battle between kings here. It was obvious that the Water Fairy's main body had awakened. Now, the Shuemu Heaven was participating in this island battle. What would the Life Queen think? Had he already escaped? Or did she think that he was still in the Bai royal city and would participate in this battle? Or did she once again think that he was the Shuemu Heaven's greatest trump card? If it was the second case, Han Fei was in a dilemma. This battle wouldn't be easy. Han Fei was still a little surprised. It was just a battle between the Water Fairy and the White Armor Emperor, and the Demon Sealing Pagoda didn't really break the Wall of Death. Why did an island appear? On the stage, Chang Shuiken said, "Each of you has 3 days to prepare. This time, we will only expel or destroy the powerful creatures on that island. However, it will still be very dangerous. This time, it's not only a battle for opportunities on the island, but also a battle between the 3 forces." Facing Chang Shuiken's words, Han Fei maintained his enthusiasm and a hint of arrogance. It seemed that he was looking forward to this kind of battle. When Han Fei returned to the mansion, he sat on the disgusting throne and closed his eyes to cultivate. Of course, Han Fei wasn't really cultivating, but thinking. He had to think of the worst possible outcome. If the Life Queen didn't have a backup plan and thought that he could even save the Water Fairy, the entire team's battle would depend on him. If that was the case, then he would really be in trouble. Now, he had just appeared in front of countless people in the Bai royal city. He had been strong all the way and almost reached the top. It would be hard for people not to notice him. In this battle, there would definitely be a lot of people watching his show. If, in that situation, he was exposed, even if the Life Queen personally saved him, she probably wouldn't be able to get away with it. Because if he was exposed, then the Yao Sealing Pagoda might be linked to him. Moreover, his heaven-defying methods had also been exposed. 3 days, only 3 days. Han Fei frowned. He needed to think of a foolproof plan to protect himself without hurting his own people under the noses of so many venerables and even kings. Of course, it would be best if he could escape from Bai royal city within these 3 days. However, based on the current situation, the probability of that happening was not high. 4 King Realm and Venerable Realm experts. His speed of escape was too slow, unless he could sneak out of Bai royal city without anyone noticing. Otherwise, once he was sensed, he probably wouldn't be able to escape. Even if he hid and forged the universe, he couldn't escape. After all, would a Venerable Realm expert give him a chance to enter Forge the Universe? It was hard to say. Besides, Han Fei actually didn't want to escape. The islands that came out of the Wall of Death probably had many fortuitous opportunities. Or else, why would the 3 parties send out so many Heaven's favorites? While Han Fei was racking his brains, the old turtle suddenly said, "Theoretically speaking, you're still cultivating on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." Huh? Han Fei was about to ask what the old turtle meant, but then he realized what was going on. Yes, he was playing the Fish Dragon King, and Han Fei's name had disappeared for more than half a year. Ever since the battle at the Dark War port, he had never shown his face again. What would he do if he were the Life Queen? Almost all the heavenly talents were sent out for this battle. Although he had broken through to the Dao-seeking state, he was also sent out. It meant that the selection of personnel was approved. Based on this, the Life Queen probably wanted his real self to appear on this battlefield. Then, he would be able to show up openly. His goal was self-evident. It was to steal the sky and change the sun so that he could easily escape from Bai Kingdom. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Are the kings all so well hidden? Isn't she afraid that I don't understand what she means? The old turtle snorted. Don't be too happy yet. If that place is completely exposed to the eyes of the venerables and kings, it won't be easy for her to rescue you. Han Fei grinned. It doesn't matter, as long as she has a backup plan. Having a backup plan means that she has a way out. Just when Han Fei was relieved, he thought of something. Did Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer come back? Han Fei's mind immediately changed. It wasn't easy for him to break into the Bai Bei royal city. Should he just wave his sleeves and leave nothing behind? Han Fei suddenly thought of something. Old Yuan, the king of the Bai Bei royal city, is already injured. He wouldn't spy on us, would he? The old turtle said, Me? You mean the king? He doesn't seem to be in the city right now. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Huh, you know that too? The old turtle said unhurriedly, Of course. Although my strength hasn't recovered and is less than 1/1000th of what it used to be, I still have my own plans. The strong can see the heavenly secrets, especially the secrets of kings. The strong can see the heavenly secrets, especially the secrets of kings. Unless they are deliberately hidden, it is not difficult to detect them. It seems that 2 days ago, the king's aura disappeared. It is very likely that something happened. Han Fei thought, That's good. The king is not here, so no one can see what happened here. Han Fei suddenly shouted, You Kaling, Lan Shui, come here for a second. Yu Kaling and Lan Shui, who had just left to exchange for resources, looked at each other and revealed panicked expressions. Especially Yu Kaling. The Fish Dragon King had ignored them several times before. That was because the Fish Dragon King was in a special situation and had no time to talk to them. Now, the Fish Dragon King should have recovered from its injuries, and the two of them were nominally the Fish Dragon King's followers. Therefore, no matter what the Fish Dragon King did to them, no one would say anything. Everyone would even think that it was reasonable. Lan Shuiner's eyes widened, and she secretly gritted her teeth. Oh no, does he want to eat both of us at the same time? Yu Kaling's heart trembled. Really? I was once an extremely dazzling prodigy, but why have I become a plaything that others can play with in this place? No matter how the Fish Dragon King treated them, they had no choice but to accept it. Therefore, they could only bite the bullet and walk to the Fish Dragon King's room. Fortunately, Han Fei didn't know what the two of them were thinking. Otherwise, he would have spat out a mouthful of blood and thought, Did I give you face? Do you have to flatter me? The old turtle was at the door, welcoming the two of them into the room expressionlessly. Even though there were arrays around, Han Fei still set up layers of arrays. This was the first time the two of them had entered the Fish Dragon King's cultivation room. When they first saw it, the two of them thought, Isn't this too simple? Besides, what the hell is this throne? And what the hell is the giant dragon on the wall? However, the two of them didn't dare to show the slightest strange look and just said respectfully, Master Dragon King. Yes, Han Fei proudly grunted. It seemed that it was only right that the two of them respected him so much. Han Fei stared at them for dozens of breaths. When the two of them felt like they had been skinned, they heard Han Fei say, I promise to bring you back to Royal City, and I also promise to take care of you. I will not go back on my word. But, seeing the two of them tremble slightly, Han Fei thought to himself, I haven't even said anything yet. Why are you trembling? Am I so scary? Han Fei said, There is no free spiritual fruit in this world. Although the two of you are the focus of the Ice God Gorge, since you have been taken care of by me, in a sense you are also my people. Yu Kaling and Lan Shui shivered all over again, and even Yu Kaling blushed. She lowered her head and bit her lips slightly, which made Han Fei dumbfounded. What the F***CK is that? Do you think I'm going to do that to you? Realizing that the meaning of his words might cause misunderstanding, Han Fei immediately said coldly, I won't accept or take care of people casually. Since you have been taken care of by me, you can serve me as your master. From now on, whether in the Bai Bei capital city or in the Ice God Gorge, I am your master. Yu Kaling and Lan Shui will suddenly raise their heads in surprise. Although we are living under someone else's roof, when did we become your master? Although we are not talented, why should we serve you as our master? Han Fei smiled contemptuously and said sarcastically, Do you think I'm not qualified? I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. If I hadn't made too many enemies, you wouldn't have been able to become my servants with your aptitudes. That's just wishful thinking. Now, I'm giving you a chance to enter the Tao and become a venerable. Do you want or not? It's up to you. As he spoke, 2 jade slips appeared in Han Fei's hand. Under their shocked gazes, Han Fei smiled. Everyone knows that I have a great opportunity, but no one knows how great it is. Han Fei weighed the two techniques in his hand and said, "These are two techniques of Tao. Although the possibility of becoming a king is not high, it's not impossible for you to become a venerable or even a peak stage venerable in the future." Lan Shuer was confused, and it was Yu Kaling who calmed down. She said, "Your Excellency Dragon King, the two of us are not very talented. What do you like about us? Why are you giving us such precious treasures?" Han Fei smiled contemptuously and said, "You are valuable as a human being. A venerable is much more valuable than a heavenly talent. If you want to survive the trial in the Baibei capital city, rise quickly, and stand out among the 100,000 experts, you have to pay a price. Otherwise, who will give you this opportunity?" Yu Kaling couldn't help but raise her head and look straight at Han Fei. "What does Master Dragon King want us to pay?" Han Fei smiled and said casually, "Soul." Chapter 13-14. The old turtle, who had been listening to Han Fei's bragging all the time, thought to himself, it's a pity that he didn't become a demon with such eloquence and awareness. He wanted to ask for his soul in such an overbearing manner. Only Han Fei would do that. Looking at Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer's shocked faces, Han Fei grinned and said, "Give me a wisp of your essence blood and a wisp of your soul, which means that you have given your lives to me. In the future, if you go against this Dragon King's will, this Dragon King only needs one thought to kill you." Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer couldn't help but look at each other. How is this selling souls? This is simply selling your life. In other words, from now on, their lives are no longer in their own hands. Without giving the two of them a chance to think, Han Fei directly threw the two jade slips in his hand over. These two great techniques were the Demon God Scripture and the Soul Hunting Path. In terms of value alone, these two techniques could be said to be peerless. For example, the Demon God Scripture was an incarnation technique, which was close to Tao. Another example would be the Soul Hunting Path, which was a great path laid out in front of him. For many people who couldn't enter the Tao in their lifetime, this was soul-stealing. Of course, for now, Han Fei actually didn't like any of them. The Demon God Scripture was okay, but Han Fei didn't continue to deduce it. Otherwise, its level would definitely not be low, and it was definitely a Tao many times stronger than the Soul Hunting Path. However, Han Fei could foresee that after his return, he would definitely be in charge of the Immortal Palace in the future, and it was impossible for him to hang around in places like the Sea Demon Royal City every day. Could it be that he was going to become the king of sea demons? When Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer took the jade slips and scanned them with their spiritual perception, their bodies trembled slightly. This was a real Tao technique. Han Fei actually threw out such a high-level treasure so casually. Seeing that the two of them were dumbfounded, Han Fei said, "I have already given you the reward. Now, is it your turn to perform?" Han Fei raised the corners of his mouth and looked at the two who were already stunned. "Of course, it's up to you whether to choose or not. Although I'm conceited, I won't threaten you too. If you're unwilling, I have my own means to take away your memories. Pretend that nothing ever happened." "Yes." Before Yu Kaling could say anything, Lan Shuer had already made her stance clear. She thought to herself, the trial in Baibei Royal City is really difficult. He didn't know when he would really die in that training field. And once they entered, it would not be easy to get out. Therefore, rather than dying, it was better to take a gamble. Now, if he really had this great technique in his hands, not only would he rise to the top, but his strength would definitely undergo unimaginable changes. On the other hand, he could die at any time, living a precarious life. The other option was to directly obtain a great art that could allow one to enter the Tao. Oh no, it was two doors. With his current friendship with Yu Kaling, it was entirely possible for him to exchange cultivation techniques with her. She knew Yu Kaling's character very well. She was very sympathetic. As long as they could convince Yu Kaling, their strength would soar. Yu Kai glanced at Lan Shuer in surprise and saw that the latter was winking at her. How could she not understand what Lan Shuer meant? But she was very puzzled. Why did Han Fei choose the two of them? Yu Kaling believed that there were still many people who couldn't enter the Tao. Han Fei was fully capable of choosing some stronger masters. As if seeing through Yu Kaling's mind, Han Fei said leisurely, "Of course, I can also use the Tao to exchange for 2 peak stage Tao-seeking servants. However, once they reach the peak stage Tao-seeking, they will be less moldable. Compared to you, they're much worse. I'm focusing on the future." Yu Kaling's face flickered a few times. She looked at the demon god scripture in her hand again and felt that this technique was even more extraordinary. Was the Fish Dragon King betting that the 2 of them could live to the venerable realm? Once the 2 of them really became venerables, the 2 great arts would be worth it. After all, even if she became a venerable, her life would be in the hands of the Fish Dragon King. Therefore, this was a very long-term investment. This made Yu Kaling feel that something was wrong. This kind of investment didn't make sense for the Fish Dragon King to make. The Fish Dragon King was arrogant, impatient, and a bit hot-tempered. In addition to Lan Shuer's previous suspicions, as well as his completely different appearance before and after entering the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, Yu Kaling suddenly thought of something. Is this person really the Fish Dragon King? However, in this situation, Yu Kaling didn't have a choice at all. She even guessed that if she didn't choose, she might die directly. After all, for the experts of the Baibei Royal City, she and Lan Shuer were originally the Fish Dragon King's subordinates. Even if the Fish Dragon King killed them, it was only a matter of course. Besides, did they still want to die in the hands of the Fish Dragon King? Thinking of this, Yu Kaling nodded. Okay, I agree. Han Fei finally grinned. Smart choice. Come on, give me your essence blood and a wisp of your soul. Since they had decided, the 2 of them didn't hesitate. However, the moment they handed over their essence blood, they knew that they would be under someone else's control for the rest of their lives. However, the 2 of them had no choice. This Fish Dragon King seemed to have them under his control. To put it nicely, they had the right to choose. However, if they didn't choose, would the Fish Dragon King really keep them alive? However, the temptation of becoming a Tao Venerable was indeed great. They didn't have this idea. The main reason was that it was too difficult to become a king. Among billions of creatures, no one could become a king. Therefore, most people didn't even dare to think about it. As for becoming a venerable, as time went by, one only needed to seek the Tao. With the qualification to seek the Tao, the possibility of becoming a venerable was naturally countless times higher than becoming a king. Han Fei collected their essence blood, picked up a wisp of their soul, and said indifferently, "Release your souls. Don't stop me." Han Fei stretched out his hand, pressed it directly on the 2's heads, and secretly touched them. A wisp of their soul went into the space between their eyebrows. Cough, cough. The 2 of them grunted, knowing that Han Fei must have done something to them. However, with their abilities, they couldn't feel anything. Han Fei subdued the 2 of them by force. At this moment, 2 milky white crystals condensed in his hands. He said, "From now on, your lives are mine. If I want you to live, you'll live. If I want you to die, you'll die. So, don't try to betray me. Otherwise, with just a thought from this Dragon King, the 2 of you will perish and your souls will scatter." Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer were a little dumbfounded. They were caught by Han Fei just like that. Until this moment, Yu Kaling suddenly felt something. Either there was something wrong with the Fish Dragon King in front of her, or the previous Fish Dragon King was pretending. In fact, he was very shrewd. However, no matter what the Fish Dragon King looked like, she was powerless to stop it now and could only accept her fate. The benefit of accepting her fate was that she would get 2 great techniques. She didn't know whether it was a loss or a gain. Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer saluted respectfully, and Han Fei said indifferently, "You are still too weak now. Even after you pass the tribulation, you won't be of much use to me. So, I won't use you in a short time. However, don't think that your lives don't belong to me. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences." "Yes, Master Dragon King." After the 2 of them left, the old turtle said, "That's it? What are you going to do with them?" Han Fei curled his lips and smiled. "What? Old Yuan, you have lived for so long. You should know that chess pieces have their own purpose. However, most of the time, they're just used as a backup plan. Is it useful? I don't know for now, but the key is to put them on the table first. Judging from all the arrangements of Old Han, Run Tianfei, Old Bai, and Old Jiang, they were all interconnected and far-reaching. The current yin-yang heaven was a game of chess. He just jumped out of the chessboard temporarily, but his identity as a chess piece didn't change. He wanted to change from a chess piece to a chess player. First of all, he had to be strong enough to challenge other chess players. In the Shuimu heaven, the Life Queen was his junior sister, so this place could be his backup plan. At least if there was the slightest problem in the yin-yang heaven, there was still room for him to turn the tables in the Shuimu heaven. 3 days later, under the leadership of Changshui Qin and the Seven Venerables, Han Fei and his team of 20 people crossed the void and came directly to the so-called island. As soon as they appeared, they felt a gust of wind sweeping across. The terrifying wind made the wind as sharp as knives, making people feel as if they were being stabbed by thousands of knives. Fortunately, this was not a strong wind. Therefore, it didn't have that kind of bone-chilling power. But even so, the wind alone was already comparable to the power of a sea demon. Han Fei was familiar with this fog. It was in the mystery barrier near the Wall of Death. Changshui Qin said, "Follow me." They moved forward for another 100 kilometers, and the wind gradually weakened until the fog began to become much clearer. Only then did they see a looming black island. The size of the island was unknown, and it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The appearance of the island was a bit strange. It seemed to be full of spiritual plants, and there were protruding peaks. Most of the place was shrouded in fog, like a woman covered in gauze, mysterious and tempting. Because the visibility became higher, the wind became much weaker. When Han Fei and the others gradually approached the island, they found that in the distant void, some people were also coming. Who else could it be other than someone from the Shuimu sky? However, the leader this time surprised Han Fei. It was an iron-towering, brawny man with tattoos all over his body. There were black thorns protruding from his palms, joints, and shoulders. Han Fei frowned. Is this the Insect King? Chapter 13:15. Han Fei wondered who the leader of the Shuimu heavenly sect would be. It should be a venerable that he was familiar with. However, he didn't expect that it would be the Insect King that he had only met once. During the tribulation, he didn't have much interaction with the Insect King, nor did he communicate with him. Therefore, when he saw the Insect King, Han Fei was only a little surprised. Except for the Insect King, no other venerables followed him. Or rather, the other venerables didn't stand up. For the three opposing forces, not showing their faces out of respect was a kind of hidden restraint. If they all showed up, one of them might take the risk to strangle the venerable, and the loss would outweigh the gain. Han Fei felt that the Insect King was powerful. This was an extremely powerful and unique figure in the bug race. His great Tao was extraordinary. Han Fei glanced at the Insect King, but the Insect King ignored him and snorted softly. A terrifying force pressed towards Han Fei. Bam! It exploded in midair, and Changshui Qin chuckled. Insect King, you are also a top master in the half-king realm. Why are you still angry with a junior? The Insect King snorted and didn't speak. This was not even a test. It can only be said that the Insect King did it on purpose. The old turtle said, Han Fei, don't look at the king directly. Do you see anyone else looking at the Insect King? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder. Isn't the Insect King just a title? The current Insect King hasn't really reached the sea expansion realm yet. The old turtle sneered. Although it is now a half-king, it is not simple. It is an unusual insect, a super strong master who has embarked on a unique path. Unlike the Insect Queen, this Insect King's combat power will be very strong. Therefore, he is also the strongest insect who is most likely to reach the sea expansion realm. He is really only one step away from the king realm. Therefore, he needs to cultivate the king's aura now. Han Fei asked, does the king's aura need to be cultivated? The old turtle said, some people need to be cultivated, and some people comprehend quickly and don't need to be cultivated. It varies from person to person and from race to race. As for you, I think if you walk the path of the Demon King, you don't need to be cultivated. Go away. Only then did Han Fei realize that the Insect King must be using this method to tell him that he had to be like the others. She was looking straight at him, so he had to react. Changshui Qin didn't mind. After all, the Worm King couldn't really kill the people from the White Shell Kingdom in front of him. What was wrong with looking at him a few times? It would be best to see him get angry. Han Fei no longer looked at the Insect King, because behind the Insect King, creatures of the water would heaven were coming one after another. Suddenly, Han Fei's pupils constricted, and he froze. Who did he just see? Wasn't that the guy who didn't fit in with the others, who wasn't handsome enough, and who had a kitchen knife at his waist? At this moment, Changshui Qin's voice sounded in their minds. Everyone remember this. The one with the dagger on his waist was Han Fei, who had passed the 4-9 King's tribulation. This person was incredibly fast, skilled in teleportation, capable of stealing life force, and had an extremely powerful fleshly body. In short, if you ran into this person, you should flee immediately. In order to allow this person to enter, Shumu Heaven sent 10 people less. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Where did this Han Fei come from in Shuemu Heaven? Besides, his appearance, temperament, and the blood-drinking knife were exactly the same as him. However, this surprise only lasted for a very short time. Han Fei immediately figured it out. Why did the Insect King come to hold the fort this time? The Han Fei opposite him must have something to do with the Zerg race. Considering that the Zerg race could breed creatures infinitely, Han Fei already had an idea. This insect queen must have sacrificed a lot of time to breed a creature that looked exactly like her. As for, why did it look like a human? It should all depend on the insect queen's own will. Besides, who said that humans weren't insects? Looking at it from another angle, wasn't the human race also a worm in this world? In just an instant, Han Fei understood the Life Queen's means. She knew that it might not be easy for her to leave after entering the White Shell Kingdom. Therefore, she took this opportunity to let the insect queen breed a creature that was exactly the same as her. At that time, when the venerables or kings weren't paying attention, she would steal the sky and change herself back. Now that this fellow that he had nurtured had fallen here, he could openly follow the Worm King back. After all, the Zerg race was very special. They regarded death as a kind of return, so they really didn't care about life and death. As the saying went, life was death, and death was life. The Zerg race had their own way of life and death. At this moment, even Han Fei was very amazed by the Life Queen strategy. If he really had a chance to switch roles on this mysterious island, he would have perfectly sneaked into the White Shell Kingdom. Even the old turtle was stunned for a long time before he spoke. It said, Han Fei, boy, you must give the Fish Dragon King a reasonable way to leave. If not, my turtle sentient body wouldn't be able to escape. You should know that this Emperor's recovery will only benefit you and not harm you. As long as you give me some time, it won't be a problem for me to become a venerable again. If it's a little longer, I may not become a king so quickly, but it's definitely not a problem for me to become a half-king. Han Fei pondered and said, I know, but let's talk about it when we get to the island. You used to be a king. You know how to avoid the senses of venerables and kings. The old turtle said, as long as the heaven secret is messed up, you can switch yourself. Since the Life Queen has already made the insect queen give birth to you, she must have thought of this. Therefore, you can definitely find the place where the heaven's secret is messed up on this island. At that time, you just need to stay there with the insect man, find a reason to let the Fish Dragon King leave smoothly, and then switch yourself. Hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei was immediately relieved. Sure enough, there was still a way. Even if there was no chance on the island, the Life Queen would definitely create an opportunity. Therefore, Han Fei wasn't worried at all at this moment. Glancing at the rest of the people, Han Fei found that among the people who came this time, except for the insect man who looked like him, there were only 9 people in total. Only then did Han Fei understand what Changshui said. What did he mean by Han Fei taking on 10 people? There were only 10 people from the Shumu heavens, so they naturally looked weak. If that insect man was really him, then he wouldn't be weak at all. But the point was that the insect man was just a fake person. Even if it was almost exactly the same as Han Fei in all aspects, it was still fake. What was fake could never become real. Besides, even if it was newly born, even if it was strong enough, its realm was still not high enough. Swish! A red leaf floated out of the void. The space crack broke, and a beautiful woman, wearing a long gauze dress that reached her ankles, appeared. Her hair was casually tied up in a bun, and she walked out of the void with her slender legs. Following behind this woman, beautiful young women came out one after another like a F** King talent show. They were all Millennium Snappers, blood demons that devoured blood and souls. When the last blood demon appeared, Han Fei's eyelids twitched slightly. Yang Ruoyan? The old turtle exclaimed in surprise. This little girl didn't get beaten to death after she went back. Han Fei smiled his heart. I knew this woman wouldn't die so easily. In this world, I think she can come up with any excuse that can be made up. The old turtle couldn't help but say, if this little girl is really so powerful, then doesn't she have many ways to make you not kill her? Han Fei said disdainfully, I'm different. I'm unreasonable. The old turtle was speechless. F***CK. It's the first time in my life that I've heard someone speak of being unreasonable so confidently. So, you're actually being reasonable when you're being unreasonable? This time, it was no longer Xue Qin or Xue Di who came from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. If there was no accident, this person's strength was probably at the same level as Chang Shuiqin or the Insect King. And Han Fei didn't know their strength, so he could only roughly guess that Chang Shuiqin was either a half-king or a peak level 1 based on high tingly eye strength. Anyway, there wasn't much difference. The Insect King, according to the old turtle's evaluation, was also a half-king. In that unknown corner of the void, there should be many more venerables. It was even possible that even the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor were secretly watching all this. Han Fei couldn't help but say, Old Yuan, can you observe the heavenly secrets and see if there are any kings here? The old turtle said, there are kings watching. You don't need to think to know this kind of thing. The top group of heavenly talents of a city has been pulled over, and so many venerables are watching. How important is this? Do you think the kings won't pay attention to it? Han Fei's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. It seemed that he had to play the role of the Fish Dragon King until he found the chaotic place of heavenly secrets. Chang Shuiqin glanced at the beautiful woman walking over slowly in the void and said lightly, Yinshu, the Blood Sea Divine Wood City's behavior of only taking benefits won't work this time. The woman smiled contemptuously. I'll show you that the heavenly talents of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City are also peerless. While the venerables were talking, Han Fei and Yang Ruiyun's eyes met again. Yang Ruiyun frowned slightly and thought, why did I run into this start again? It wasn't easy for me to settle the matter last time, but now I'm still being ostracized. But the Fish Dragon King popped up again? And what made Yang Ruiyun a little speechless was that the corners of the Fish Dragon King's mouth were slightly raised. Is he smiling? Yang Ruiyun's mood fell to the bottom, and she sneered in her heart. This time, I'll definitely kill you. However, when Yang Ruiyun looked at the Shumu heavenly camp, she almost exploded. Is that Han Fei? First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 13:16. Yang Ruiyun had never dreamed that she would see Han Fei one day. It wasn't until she came to the Shuemu heaven that Yang Ruiyun gradually learned about the forces in the sea and the existence of the Wall of Death. Han Fei shouldn't have been able to come to the Shuemu heaven in his life. But how many years had it been? How did Han Fei become a top heavenly talent in the Shuemu heaven? Venerable Yinshu of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City said, Attention, everyone. The person standing in the front of the Shuemu heaven is called Han Fei. He has already passed the 4-9 King Tribulation. Whether it's speed, strength, physique, or soul strength, he is very strong. If you encounter him, either form a group of 3 to 5 or escape directly. Don't face him alone. Yang Ruiyun's heart skipped a beat. Is Han Fei still so strong? Yang Ruiyun once thought that her growth was extremely fast, and Han Fei had already been left far behind by her. But as it turned out, Han Fei was a top heavenly talent who had passed the 4-9 King tribulation. He was already an explorer. Han Fei glanced at the square formation of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and saw her, but he soon moved his eyes away and looked at the Baibei Royal City. Wait, Yang Ruiyun felt that something was wrong. Han Fei didn't know her. That was impossible. It had only been a few years. Han Fei's memory couldn't be so bad, right? Besides, when Han Fei looked at her just now, his eyes didn't linger at all. It didn't seem that he deliberately pretended not to know her. It seemed that he really didn't know her. Yinshu seemed to notice that Yang Ruiyun was a little strange. He couldn't help but glance at her and ask, "Why are your mental fluctuations so strong?" Yang Ruiyun quickly came back to her senses. "Master Yinshu, it's all because I saw the Fish Dragon King who hurt me so much." Yinshu nodded. "Even if you meet the Fish Dragon King alone, don't fight him one-on-one. If nothing goes wrong, you are no match for him." Yang Ruiyun responded respectfully, but she began to think in her heart. Did she accidentally bring Han Fei to the Shuemu heaven? Or did he find a way to come here? If it was the first, it would be fine. But if it was the second, it would involve a big secret that connected the Yin-Yang heaven. Once the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the White Shell Kingdom got wind of this news, they would probably be wild with joy. In fact, it was even possible for them to join forces. Yang Ruiyun made up her mind. No matter whether Han Fei recognized her or not, this was something she could use against him. However, if they met on the island, this information would be a great weapon. While Yang Ruiyun was shocked, Han Fei, who was in the Baibei Royal City, also frowned slightly. He had been observing all this time. Unsurprisingly, Yang Ruiyun definitely recognized him from Shuemu Tian. He had even guessed that there was something wrong with that version of himself. Unfortunately, the Life Queen naturally didn't know this information. Therefore, the fake insect man had no feelings for Yang Ruiyun at all. Han Fei's heart surged. Yang Ruiyun, don't be stupid. Don't tell they're venerable now. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hide the fact that he came from the Yin-Yang heaven. What would the consequences be? Han Fei couldn't figure it out. However, after 7 to 8 breaths of time, Supremacy Yunshu of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City did not react at all. Han Fei was secretly relieved. Just when Han Fei relaxed his vigilance, Zhang Xiaotian suddenly said to him, "You seem a little uneasy." Han Fei replied calmly, "I'm excited. My hands are itching to clash with the heavenly talents of both sides. Especially that Han Fei. I heard that no one in the same realm could defeat him. It's a piece of cake for him to fight 100 enemies alone." Chang Shui Qin slightly tilted his head, wanting to hear what Han Fei was going to say. Zhang Xiaotian said, "I advise you not to attack rashly. This person fought 10 people alone and was allowed to enter this exploration. Even the venerables are so sure. How confident do you think you are in beating him?" Han Fei pretended to be passionate and licked the corner of his mouth. "It doesn't matter if I can beat him or not. What matters is whether I dare to fight him or not. I will be careful, but if I really encounter this person," Chang Shui Qin suddenly said, "if you really encounter him, run." Han Fei pretended to be stunned and didn't say anything. He just accepted it indifferently, as if he was still very unconvinced. The green silk spirit said, "You're truly a proud person. It wasn't easy for you to take my position. Don't be careless and die in an exploration trial." Han Fei glanced at him proudly with a sneer on his lips. Chang Shui Qin said, "Since the 3 parties are all here, there's no need to wait. Although this island came out of the Wall of Death, it's in the territory of the White Bells Royal City after all. Why don't we land first?" Yin Chu sneered. "Chang Shui Qin, do you believe that yourself?" The Insect King replied straightforwardly, "No." Chang Shui Qin grinned and said, "In that case, each party will choose a place to land. After all, this island is covered in clouds and mist, which would be said to be dangerous. There's no need to clash with each other and kill each other right from the start." Yin Chu looked at Chang Shui Qin and nodded slightly. "That's not appropriate." The Insect King snorted and replied solemnly, "No. Chang Shui-Chin shrugged. Then what do you think? The insect king said, everyone will choose their own place. If there is an overlap, it's their own choice. Let them fight for it. The three of us are not allowed to reveal any information to them. This king can hear it. Chang Shui-Chin said, then doesn't the Shumu heaven have an advantage with fewer people? It's not easy to meet people. The insect king sneered. You have more people and more places to explore. You're the one who wins. Yin Chu pursed his lips and smiled. I think the insect king's proposal is good. I accept. Chang Shui-Chin narrowed his eyes slightly. Is the insect king really here to let people hunt for treasures? Chang Shui-Chin nodded. Okay. A seal descended and enveloped them, and Chang Shui-Chin shouted, Look, this is the topographic map of this island. As he spoke, Chang Shui-Chin stretched out his hand, and a map of the island drawn with spiritual energy appeared in everyone's sight. Only then did Han Fei see the whole picture of the island. To his surprise, this island didn't seem to be small at all. It was an irregular square and round shape. It had to be at least 20,000 square kilometers in circumference. On this island, there were mountains, swamps, seas of demonic plants, and places that looked like orchards. Chang Shui-Chin said, choose a place and tell me the location. By the way, I have to remind you of one thing. On the island, don't escape into the void. This is an island that comes out of the wall of death. The void is unstable and turbulent. Once the void is torn, the consequences are unpredictable. Not only that, above the island, there may be void cracks in many places. You must be careful. This is not an ordinary trial ground. It's dangerous here. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. What if I use the half-void divine walking technique? If this doesn't work, wouldn't it be inconvenient for me to use the heavenly void divine walking technique? Wouldn't the advantage of speed be completely gone? Han Fei quickly scanned the map. Judging from the areas shown on the map, most of them were dangerous places. To say the least, the mountains were definitely dangerous. Others might not know, but he, who had stayed in the 100,000 mountains for so long, knew it. Besides, if there were beasts in the mountains, he couldn't attack them. The swamp was a good place to go. That place was hidden, and most of the creatures he met should be unfamiliar with. It was hard to say if it was a place covered by demonic plants. He could spare some of the demonic plants, but it didn't mean that he couldn't kill all the demonic plants in the world. After all, in this world, there were too many kinds of demonic plants. As for the big river on the island, there must be something terrible in the river. It was the nature of life to live along the river. That was probably the most dangerous place on this island. As for the orchard, Han Fei pondered for a while. Since it looked like an orchard, there should be a lot of spiritual fruits. However, he didn't seem to be short of spiritual fruits now. However, the treasure-hunting desire made Han Fei's heart itch. Just when Han Fei was about to choose the orchard, the old turtle suddenly said, From this map, I can't see the chaotic heavenly secrets at all. However, the chaotic heavenly secrets must be an important place on the island. Otherwise, the heavenly secrets there can't be chaotic. So, if you find the place where the heavenly secrets are chaotic, you will find the greatest opportunity on the island. Han Fei was shocked. The old turtle was right. He was a bit hasty just now. Han Fei said, What do you think looks like a place where the heavenly secrets are chaotic? The old turtle's voice hummed. I don't know. I can't see it on this map. Han Fei was speechless. You can't see it, but I can. Old Yuan, you are becoming more and more unreliable now. The old turtle snorted. I'm just reminding you. Han Fei ignored the old turtle, but he was not in a hurry to make up his mind. Suddenly, Han Fei noticed a very inconspicuous place on the map. It was a dark area. There were not many demonic plants around, but the overall color was red. Han Fei was taken aback. A volcano? In this world, volcanoes could not simply be called volcanoes. The power of volcanoes was not enough to destroy most creatures. That was why there were spiritual plants around. Han Fei immediately said, Lord Chang Shui, I choose this place. Seeing the place chosen by Han Fei, Chang Shui-Chin was slightly taken aback. This place is not simple. Are you going to temper your body? Han Fei was relieved to hear Chang Shui-Chin's words. A place that was not simple was a good place. At least, from the map, this place was very inconspicuous. After a while, everyone chose a place one after another. The seal was lifted, and the three venerables seemed to have exchanged information. Chang Shui-Chin looked back at everyone. Remember, in a moment, I will send you directly to the place you chose. The next crisis depends on how you deal with it. Second update, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 13-17. Han Fei finally understood. Wasn't he just going to be a lone island hero? It was a true PUBG. Throw some people on a deserted island and see who wins in the end? However, what was slightly different was that this island was a little bigger and a little more dangerous. However, compared to their strength, the difference was not very big. Han Fei looked at Shui Mutian, but his eyes did not linger on the insect man who looked very similar to him. But he was surprised that no acquaintances came this time. For example, Shu Xiaoman wasn't there. Otherwise, he could have found the bug man through young man. Now that the two sides were very far apart, he had to think of a way to find the location of the insect man. Zhang Shui-Chin had naturally heard that the fish dragon king had been humiliated by a woman from Shuimu heaven. Seeing Han Fei's eyes darting around, he couldn't help but say, "Stop looking." This time, there were no women from Shuimu heaven. That young man, Shu, probably didn't come. Han Fei glanced at them one last time. Just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, his eyes suddenly lit up. The handle of the bugman's kitchen knife seemed to be made of 10,000-year-old big red trunk. Han Fei immediately turned his head and glanced at the Blood Sea Divine Wood City again. Han Fei thought to himself, the 10,000-year-old big red trunk is easy to track. However, on the Blood Sea Divine Wood City's side, who hadn't survived on the big red trunk, it was still a bit difficult for him to find that bugman. But at least, the big red trunk gave Han Fei a signal. Through Little White's ability, he could guarantee that he would at most meet people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Han Fei wanted to observe more, but he heard Chang Shui-Chin shout, "Okay, I will send you there. Remember, you only have 7 days to search for treasures." Once the time was up, he would soar 3,000 feet into the air. If you want to retreat ahead of time, you'll have to fly 100,000 feet into the air. That is considered as giving up. 7 days? There were only 50 people in this hunt, but it included 3 forces. In such a high-level competition, unless there was no other choice and there was a reason to completely give up in advance, anyone who really withdrew would have no hope of becoming a powerhouse in this lifetime. After all, so many big shots were watching. Rip! A spatial rift tore open. In an instant, they saw chaotic void marks overflowing from this spatial crack. Chang Shui-Chin said, "You saw? Do not enter the void in this space. Otherwise, the chances of dying are extremely high." With that, Chang Shui-Chin stretched out his hand, and the bodies of Han Fei and the others flickered and disappeared. Han Fei felt that his eyes darkened and then brightened. A force was pushing him. When he opened his eyes again, he felt that the temperature around him had suddenly increased by a few hundred degrees. The raging wind from before had now disappeared without a trace. Han Fei knew that he had arrived. It really is PUBG. I wonder if anyone has chosen the same destination as me? Han Fei immediately scanned with his perception and found that it could spread more than 20 kilometers. Underground, there seemed to be some kind of power absorbing his perception, making it impossible for his perception to continue spreading. This perception range was not large, and Han Fei could only see the terrain of one side. The volcanic land that he had requested to come to was barren of spirit plants, so naturally, there were very few living beings. Han Fei looked around and didn't feel flustered. Being able to perceive more than 20 kilometers was better than being unable to perceive with his soul. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, my perception power is limited. How about you? Can you show me the way?" The old turtle said, "At this moment, this island is under everyone's attention. If I perceive 1,000 kilometers away, someone will immediately notice that something is wrong with you. So, I can perceive a few hundred kilometers away, but I can't." Han Fei thought to himself, "I forgot about this. The king might be hiding somewhere and watching the show. However, Han Fei didn't panic. At least the ichthyosaur king had the ability to shrink the ground. In terms of speed, he was still faster than others. Han Fei took a step forward and covered a kilometer in one step. However, as soon as he took this step, 3 void cracks immediately appeared. He hurriedly used the fish dragon dance to dodge, and only then did he barely manage to dodge. Wow, the close distance technique is also useless? In the outside world, Venerable Yinshu said, "Haha, it seems that the fish dragon king of the Baibei royal city is a bit weak." Changshui Qin smiled and said, "Actually, it's not bad. After all, he has killed many heavenly talents in the Bloodsea Divinewood City." Humph! Han Fei seemed to have narrowly avoided the disaster. In fact, even if the void cracks hit him, he wouldn't care. The speed was so slow that it would at most leave a few bloody marks on his body. No, after one attempt, Han Fei immediately gave up the closed distance technique. Therefore, Han Fei directly chose to soar into the air until he reached a height of thousands of meters. This should be most people's first thought. After all, soaring into the air was considered as giving up. What did a mere 10,000 feet count for? The higher one flew, the farther one could see. At this moment, Han Fei found that the place he was in was a barren land. As far as his eyes could see, there were mountains within 100 kilometers. Han Fei flew to one of the mountains, stood on a huge rock, and moved his ears slightly. With the help of the wind on the top of the mountain, he began to listen. Gurgle. After only a few minutes, Han Fei confirmed that there must be an active volcano within 1,000 kilometers of him. Glancing at the sky, Han Fei flew all the way. Although he didn't accelerate to the fastest speed, it only took him a moment to cover 1,000 kilometers. Han Fei just felt a little pity that the search for the water fairy was over. Now, his so-called exploration of the new island could only be watched by others, which was actually very disadvantageous to him. For example, he couldn't release the fire seed from the sea-quelling painting. In the case that the kings and the venerables could see it, his little trick would definitely not be able to hide. Swish! While flying, Han Fei suddenly saw lightning appear in the air. Clang! Han Fei quickly blocked it with a spear. It was not until the moment the two collided and separated that Han Fei saw the true appearance of the lightning. Wow! A thunder leopard? Han Fei was stunned. This island was definitely not the 100,000 mountains. Otherwise, this island would be full of mountains, and it couldn't be like this. This meant that he had encountered a wild thunder leopard. Was the appearance of this thunder leopard related to the 100,000 mountains? But at least he saw beasts. It also proved that some beasts survived. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside the Wall of Death. How could beasts that should have disappeared for hundreds of thousands of years appear on a random island? The thunder leopard was extremely fast and could turn into lightning. However, Han Fei knew this kind of creature too well. So, when the thunder leopard turned into lightning and pounced at him again, Han Fei pretended to attack it dozens of times. After about 10 minutes, looking at the lightning in the sky, Han Fei said to the place where the thunder leopard was so close, yet worlds apart. However, Han Fei didn't use the so-close technique this time, but aimed at the thunder leopard. 5 void cracks appeared in the void, and the thunder leopard flashed quickly in the void cracks. In the blink of an eye, the distance between them was extended. Caught unprepared, the thunder leopard was hit by 2 lightning bolts. Oh! Han Fei roared, and the shadow of a dragon appeared and charged at the thunder leopard. The thunder leopard, who had just been slightly injured, was slightly stunned when it heard the beast's soul suppression roar. That might be the difference between the beasts and the other clans. When other people heard Han Fei's roar, they thought it was a kind of inherited power of the Dragon King's bloodline in his body. However, in the ears of the beasts, there was another kind of power in Han Fei's roar. That was the roar of a beast. The thunder leopard even heard a little of its own roar. It was very little, but it heard it, so it was quite surprised. Han Fei roared, "How dare you sneak attack me? I don't care what you are, Dai." He was about to activate the so close, yet world apart technique again, when the thunder leopard disappeared in the sky with a swish. It disappeared in the boundless void in the blink of an eye, as fast as lightning. Han Fei didn't chase it. He could use the so close, but he couldn't use it to travel. The onlookers all understood that Han Fei couldn't chase it, because he would run into endless space cracks if he did. Besides, Han Fei didn't want to chase it. What could he do if he caught it? He couldn't kill the Thunder Leopard, could he? Han Fei naturally didn't want to. He and the Thunder Leopard's ancestor had both learned the roar of beasts. Now, he was going to kill the bloodline that the Thunder Leopard had painstakingly inherited. The three venerables all saw Han Fei's performance. Changshui Qin smiled faintly and looked at Yinshu. Look, it's not bad, right? Yinshu didn't speak, but looked at the others in his family. And the Insect King's eyes were like abysses. He thought to himself, Changshui Qin, you idiot, your fish dragon king died outside long ago. Why are you still showing off now? However, the Insect King didn't care what Han Fei did, but that fake Han Fei went to the wrong place. According to the decision of Serenity, Wushang Shui, and the Life Queen, they put the Bugman Han Fei in the spiritual orchard. After all, although Han Fei had only been in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree for a short time, his greedy personality was unanimously recognized. Only the heavens knew why this fellow had chosen a volcanic crater with nothing at all. After driving the Thunder Leopard away, Han Fei quickly came to a crater, which was barren. Han Fei even saw a lot of diamond-like crystals on the ground, as well as strange-colored traces of black lava flowing past. The volcano was about 3,000 meters in diameter and funnel-shaped inside. More than 800 meters down, there was a lava lake surging. Han Fei couldn't help but frown slightly. Theoretically, it should be a big volcano, but in this world, it seemed a little small. Standing at the crater, the temperature was about 1,000 degrees. This temperature had no effect on Han Fei at all. Han Fei's perception penetrated less than a kilometer into the lava lake, but he found that his perception couldn't go any further. It was very hot there. The old turtle said, "You can try to go to the bottom of the lake. When the temperature reaches a certain level, it can burn the void and block the vision to a certain extent." Han Fei was speechless. "I'm afraid I'm the first one to jump into the magma." Having said that, Han Fei didn't stop at all. He leaped into the air and plunged his head into the lava lake. Chapter 13:18. Seeing Han Fei jump directly into the lava lake, Changshui Qin didn't feel surprised. As early as when Han Fei chose the Thunder Prison, Changshui Qin knew that Han Fei had chosen a path of body refinement. Many people knew that it was easy to refine one's body with lightning. However, very few people could really do it. Now, the power of this lava was much weaker than the power of lightning. Changshui Qin felt that if one cultivated in it for a long time, it would definitely be more suitable for the Fish Dragon King. This was probably the reason why the Ichthyosaur King had chosen this volcanic area. In fact, when these venerables cleaned this island, they had seen this magma. Under the magma, there were some special creatures. For some reason, the venerables didn't attack these creatures. Therefore, under the magma, it could be said to be dangerous. Plop. Most people wouldn't choose to stay in such a remote place. Therefore, Han Fei was indeed the only one here at the moment. As for what kind of opportunity there was, Han Fei could basically eat it all by himself. Under normal circumstances, the temperature of the lava lake was only more than 1,000 degrees. However, when Han Fei was at the crater, he felt that the temperature had already reached almost 1,000 degrees. At this moment, Han Fei plunged into the lava lake and suddenly felt that the temperature had soared several times. However, the temperature in the upper lava lake didn't seem to reach 3,000 degrees. Without the old turtle's reminder, Han Fei continued to swim down. For the current Han Fei, his physical fitness was comparable to that of a semi-venerable venerable, and even faintly surpassed that of a semi-venerable venerable, so the temperature in the lava lake naturally wouldn't baffle him. Thousands of meters down, the temperature still didn't change. According to Han Fei's knowledge structure, 500 to 800 kilometers below the lava would reach the asthenosphere below the surface. However, in this world, the situation might be much more complicated. It was just 1,000 kilometers. Maybe he would still be in the magma. Besides, this was an island, and it always had a limit. Therefore, Han Fei went all the way down without any scruples. He was almost sure that there was still a lot of space to go down in this lava lake. Han Fei rushed all the way down, but after only more than 30 kilometers, he suddenly had an idea. He twisted his body, swung his spear horizontally, and a terrifying force burst the lava in front of him. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, Han Fei saw a special creature with a body like lava, a tail like scissors, fins like flames, and pure white eyes suddenly split into hundreds of fire arrow-like cones that darted at Han Fei. At that moment, a message flashed in Han Fei's eyes. Name, Fire Charm, Fish, Introduction, a peculiar creature of a lava lake. It feeds on unusual flames and is a group of creatures. Good at transforming flames, using fire elemental essence to defend against enemies, likes to eat strange flames, has an impulsive personality, needs to be treated with caution. Level 73, Quality. Rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 722,260 points. Effect. Eating fire eyes often can cultivate the fire eyes technique and have a certain chance of seeing the essence of things. Collectible, fire eye absorbable. Remark, the fire succubus lives in groups. After reading the information of the fire mystic fish, before Han Fei could savor it carefully, the spear in his hand had already rolled up and blocked the hundreds of fire arrows like a wheel of wind and fire. It can turn into fire? Han Fei instantly realized that the strange thing about this creature was that its body could disperse at any time. What kept them alive was actually their soul. With a deafening dragon roar, hundreds of masses of magma around him exploded in an instant. They were all the split bodies of the fire mystic fish, which were blown up by Han Fei's roar. Phew! Han Fei was slightly relieved. It seemed that the fire charm fish was hidden in the magma, so it was not easy to see them. His own strength should not be very strong. At this moment, Han Fei saw a pair of white eyeballs floating in the magma. This should be the fire eye, which could be cultivated with the fire eyes technique, but it was useless for him. After all, he already had the yin-yang divine eyes. It could only be stronger than this so-called fiery pupil. There was no reason for it to be weaker. However, in any case, this was an eye technique which was extremely difficult to find. Therefore, this fire eye had its value. At least, it could be sold for money. Han Fei put away the fire eye. Although he felt that he seemed to have missed something, he didn't care and continued to explore. Just as Han Fei continued to explore, a beautiful woman was quickly flying towards this magma. Needless to say, she was from the Blood-Sea Divinewood City. Outside, Yin Chu frowned slightly. The Fish Dragon King was not weak. Otherwise, it wouldn't have dared to drill directly into this magma pool. If a person was arrogant, he must have the strength to be arrogant. Therefore, when this blood demon appeared here, although Yin Chu wanted to warn him, he didn't have a chance at all. At this moment, Chang Shui-Qin's face didn't look too good. Han Fei had gone too deep. Besides, he just killed a fire charm fish casually. Why the F***CK did he want to kill it? Couldn't he wait before doing it? As soon as Han Fei drilled down for 10 or 20 kilometers, he found something wrong. Swish, swish, swish. When he scanned with his perception, he felt his scalp go numb. He saw that more than 10 kilometers away, a huge number of flame arrows were stabbing at him. There were probably hundreds of thousands of them. Han Fei was stunned. Damn, what's going on? I've only killed one of you. How much hatred do you have? How much hatred do you have? Why do you have to do this? In particular, the swish didn't seem to be the sound of magma breaking, but more like a language exclusive to the fire charm fish. Because when this sound sounded, Han Fei perceived that scattered flame arrows began to spurt out from all directions. Han Fei was dumbfounded and suddenly remembered the note in the information of the fire charm fish. This fire charm fish is a group fish. This point was singled out for a separate note. Han Fei immediately cursed. F***CK. Can't you just say it clearly? Seeing that the situation was not right, Han Fei quickly sank with the spear in his hand. After all, he was just a half-mermaid who had just entered the Tao-seeking state. Even if he was a peerless heavenly talent, and could be listed on the heavenly talent list of the Baibei Royal City. If tens of thousands of Tao-seeking state creatures suddenly appeared and wanted to kill him, how could he still win? What would Chang Shui, Qin, and the others think? Therefore, Han Fei didn't choose to fight, but rushed to the bottom of the magma lake. Even so, the battle did not stop. The fire-charmed fish were almost indistinguishable from the magma. They would only appear when they launched an attack and turned into arrows. Therefore, hundreds of flame arrows appeared out of thin air from time to time, and tens of thousands of arrows bombarded him at the same time. Han Fei didn't dare to block them with all his strength, so he was hit by the arrows. Otherwise, if he blocked all the arrows, people would think that they had underestimated his strength. However, Han Fei still had a way to deal with them. As he sprinted and chased, he had killed dozens of fire-immortal fish. When the woman from the Blood-Sea Divinewood City arrived, she didn't notice anything unusual here. She scanned with her perception and found that the depth she could dive was limited. Thinking for a while, she planned to observe for a while, and if there was no problem, she would explore further step by step. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei had rushed 200 kilometers below the magma lake. When he reached here, the surrounding power began to rise and had exceeded 3,000 degrees. Even though it was nothing for cultivators, the temperature wasn't low either. As far as Han Fei knew, the temperature on the surface of the sun was no more than 5,000 degrees, and the temperature at the center of the earth was no more than 6,500 degrees. This was just a magma lake, but the temperature in the lake had already reached 3,000 degrees. This was already very exaggerated. Bam! Han Fei heard the sound of magma bursting 100 kilometers away, which seemed to be the sound of something swimming over. In an instant, Han Fei straightened his spear, gathered demonic energy, and the spear light bloomed. The instant mystic spear was ready. According to Han Fei's years of combat experience, he should have been targeted by something. Because the opponent had already arrived, even if he escaped, it would be too late if he didn't use the closed distance technique and the star's teleportation technique. Therefore, Han Fei chose to fight head-on. As a top heavenly talent, he didn't even have the courage to face a creature. Zhang Shui Qin frowned slightly, thinking, is the fish dragon king sure that there are treasures below? Zhang Shui Qin didn't deny this. There was an alien fire below, and he didn't clean this place. At first, Zhang Shui Qin thought that only the blood demons from the Blood-Sea Divinewood City would break into this place to compete for the alien fire. Therefore, not everything in this magma lake was cleaned up. Some of them could even be said to have deliberately stayed behind. In the deeper part, a wisp of aura had probed out, but it soon shrank back. They didn't expect that the first one to attack was from their side. Of course, the three venerables didn't take it too seriously, because not only Han Fei's side was in trouble, but in fact, everywhere was in trouble. Several battles had broken out, and it was much more interesting than Han Fei's side. At this moment, the moment Han Fei perceived the appearance of the Black Shadow, the spear in his hand had already been launched. At the same time, the close distance technique was launched, and a crack appeared in the void. However, with a swish, the flame drilled into the void. F***CK. Didn't I say that I couldn't drill into the void? Chapter 1319. Han Fei's first thought was to find the place where the heavenly secrets were chaotic. Even if he couldn't perceive it, the old turtle could. The reason why he chose this place was that he couldn't see the chaotic heavenly secrets there from the map, and because this volcano was full of hot flames. If there was a chance, he would show it to Little Black. Even if Little Black didn't like the level of the flames here, he could still take over the fire source. Of course, the premise was that he had a good reason to swallow the fire essence here. However, at this moment, he hadn't even seen the alien flame or the fire essence yet, but he was already fighting with the creatures in this magma lake. Furthermore, aren't these living beings a little too powerful? Didn't they say that they had been cleaned up? Was this how they cleaned up? This time, although there were Tao-seeking state creatures among the heavenly talents who came to the island, at least most of them were peak-level sea spirits or peak-level law enforcers. Han Fei didn't know how the insect man from the Xuanmu heaven made it past the tribulation. In fact, the number of Tao-seeking state powerhouses could be counted on two hands. But what about now? He casually entered a magma lake, and there were Tao-seeking state creatures inside. Behind him, the fire-immortal fish that had been chasing him didn't stop. And here, there was another unknown creature attacking. Bam! The space cracked, and Han Fei was only 1,000 meters away. Although there were spatial cracks, Han Fei didn't care at all. Shifting his feet, he twisted his body and brushed past the spatial crack. And the attacking creature had a huge body, which was more than 100 meters long, and its terrifying power rushed straight to the space where Han Fei was just now. Humph! Han Fei stabbed out with his spear, and the magma exploded, and all his demonic energy gathered on the spear. Even at this time, Han Fei didn't forget to create a golden dragon shadow for himself. Boom! The bottom of the magma lake exploded. Unfortunately, he was already 300 kilometers away from the bottom of the lake. Although there was a force impact in the gurgling magma, the force gradually became the power of magma and gradually disappeared. Even if there was still a trace of power leaking out, it eventually became a flapping tongue of magma on the surface of the magma lake. This was not unusual in the magma lake. Therefore, the Heaven's favorite from the Mysticwood City, who just arrived, didn't feel like anything was wrong. In fact, the bottom of the lava lake had already been overturned. Han Fei blew up half of the fiery creature's body and chased after it again with a closed-distance technique. In order to put on a show, Han Fei even let a void crack sweep past him. At this moment, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name, Flaming Python. Introduction, a peculiar creature of the lava lake. It feeds on extraordinary flames and consumes the fire poison of the lava lake all year round. Therefore, the flames on its body are extremely poisonous. The flaming berserk python had a violent temperament and a strong desire to attack. Its strength was over 300 waves, and it was not to be underestimated. Level 75, quality, exotic, law enforcement. Blazing venomous fangs contains spiritual energy greater than 131,616 points. Effect, inedible collectible flame skin, flame smoke bones, flame eye, flame vein, flame tooth, absorbable. The moment he saw this creature, he felt that the heaven spirit detoxifying insect in his body moved. On the surface of this fiery python, there was fire poison. Although Han Fei could dodge it with the star shifting technique, however, Han Fei just blocked it with a demonic energy protective cover. The speed of the python was extremely fast. As soon as the tip of Han Fei's spear touched it, half of its body was blown up. However, even though half of its body was blown up, the wild boa still whipped its tail at Han Fei. Han Fei still wanted to step back and avoid it, but a large group of fire demonic fish turned into flame arrows and rushed at him from behind. Son of AB *TCH. Han Fei secretly cursed, holding the spear with both hands, and recalled the move that Zhang Xuanyu used on him in the Ideal Palace. In an instant, the spear spun, and Han Fei shouted, "Heaven's Gate!" When the spear appeared, there were dozens of exclamations in the void. In the void, a venerable of the Baibei royal city was surprised. I've never seen the Fish Dragon King use this move. Come to think of it, it's a trump card that he's been holding back. Not bad. Chang Shuiqin was also slightly stunned. If it's this move, it might have been able to take the 6th spear of Zhang Xiaoyan's 9 bloody spears a few days ago. In the distant void, the White Armor Emperor was slightly moved. Oh, this spear is a bit interesting. This boy can be trained. And the Life Queen almost rolled her eyes, thinking, what the hell is this Han Fei doing? Don't you know that you should keep a low profile? How come you can be so skillful after becoming a sea demon? This attack seemed to contain a certain aura of the Great Way. This meant that although the Fish Dragon King had just passed the tribulation, it had already gained some understanding of the Great Way. Therefore, although it was a little shaky to create such an attack, it was definitely not weak. Bam! How could Han Fei know this? The body of the fiery python was penetrated by Han Fei's spear again, and a big hole appeared in its 100-meter-long body. Han Fei took a step and drilled through the hole. He was hit by a void crack, and the other 3 were all cut on the body of the fiery python. I wonder if this flaming berserk python feels any pain? Thinking about it, there should be, which was why he roared angrily just now. At this moment, a spiritual attack blasted into Han Fei's mind. And Han Fei also turned around and gave it a soul-stunning spike. Puff! In addition to the soul-stunning spike, there were also tens of thousands of flame arrows. Those were all soul attacks, and at this moment, they all fell on the fiery python. Originally, the level of the fire mortal fish and the fiery python was not much different. At this moment, tens of thousands of soul attacks bombarded. How could the fiery python withstand it? Under such violent soul attacks, the fiery python didn't even have time to run, and its head was blown up. Han Fei scooped up a snake gallbladder, and then continued to rush down. Maybe the fire immortal fish felt that killing one fiery python was not enough, so it continued to chase Han Fei crazily at this moment. And Han Fei pretended to be poisoned, directly stuffed the snake gallbladder into his mouth, and swallowed it in big mouthfuls. Han Fei asked while running, "Old Yuan, where are the opportunities here? Are there still a lot of people watching me now?" The old tortoise said, "Just based on a shot you just fired, a lot of people should be paying attention to you now." Han Fei was stunned. "What's wrong with that spear of mine? I'm not good at using this move. Knock on the heaven gate." This was Zhang Xuanyu's move. The old turtle said, "This spear is too fierce and can break barriers. Your current understanding is not deep enough, but this blow is very powerful. It's very interesting." Han Fei thought to himself, it turns out that the strongest combat skill that Zhang Xuanyu comprehended in the Ideal Palace is so powerful. Even an emperor like the old turtle is boasting about it. If I had known this, I would have practiced more. Back then, in the Ideal Palace, Zhang Xuanyu specially asked him to practice the heaven-knocking gate for a whole day. At that time, Han Fei was still thinking, how can I avoid it? Therefore, he paid special attention to Zhang Xuanyu's technique. In addition, he had a certain understanding of spears and sticks, and he had practiced the true solution of sticks, which was a comprehensive stick technique. Therefore, Han Fei also comprehended the essence of the heaven-knocking gate. This time, Han Fei continued to dive. Those fire immortal fish were still chasing him. Han Fei immediately came up with an idea. Anyway, it was a bit unreliable to blindly look for opportunities. He might as well get rid of these fire immortal fish as soon as possible. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel safe being chased by tens of thousands of fire immortal fish. By the way, Han Fei felt that if there were opportunities here, they must be in the depths. Of course, the more dangerous the place was, the easier it was to find opportunities. However, the only thing that Han Fei didn't know was the depth of this lava lake. Logically speaking, it should be more than 1,000 kilometers, or even thousands of kilometers. After all, such a large piece of land was very large. If it weren't for the fact that this land was too short and too hasty, Han Fei wouldn't have rushed all the way down. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei's diving speed was getting faster and faster, and the number of fire mortal fish behind him was also increasing, so that no other creatures dared to approach him at all. After all, Han Fei was not a big deal, but a large group of fire mortal fish was terrifying. Besides, Han Fei was surprised to find that those fire immortal fish seemed to be fusing. The arrows, which were only as thick as a finger, were now as hard as spines, faster and larger, and fiercer. Can these things fuse? The old turtle explained, not fuse but flock. When a large group of them gather, they become like this. Han Fei gritted his teeth and dived, feeling that the temperature around him was rising rapidly. When Han Fei dived more than 800 kilometers to the bottom of the lava lake, he felt that the temperature here had exceeded 4,000 degrees. When the temperature reached such a height, even Han Fei felt that his body was on fire. The change of temperature was not as simple as 1 or 2 degrees on the surface. When the temperature exceeded a certain limit, Han Fei felt that as the temperature rose a little bit, the scorching feeling grew exponentially. The old turtle said, if the temperature of the lava gets any higher, even your body may not be able to bear it. Han Fei looked back. Why can these fire immortal fish still chase me? The old turtle said, "Their strength doesn't come from their bodies, but from their souls." Immediately, Han Fei thought of something. If he could kill the fire-immortal fish and absorb their souls with the void lines, it would be a good place to grind monsters. He really hoped that he could come here alone in the future. When Han Fei was about to figure out how to get rid of the fire-immortal fish, he suddenly felt that the lava lake became even thicker and seemed to be reaching the bottom. Huh, I've reached the bottom already? Huh. Han Fei saw that at the bottom of the lava lake, there was a big bubble floating, which was quite peculiar. Han Fei thought of something. Was there an opportunity in the red bubble? Pooh! He pierced the bubble with his spear, and with a hum, the flames on Han Fei's body suddenly soared to hundreds of degrees. His hair and his battle suit were burned up in an instant. The high-temperature gas made Han Fei's body numb, and he paused. Shoot, swish, swish, swish. At this moment, 2 flame arrows hit him, and Han Fei waved his spear to resist the blast. However, when he turned around, he saw the densely packed flame arrows, and he felt unwell. Huh? The ground is full of terrifying bubbles. Can I burn these fire-immortal fish to death if I pierce them? At the critical moment, Han Fei stabbed his spear down without hesitation. He gathered all the demonic qi in his body into the tip of the spear. Is he crazy? Someone was watching Han Fei, thinking that he might not be able to escape from this lava lake. After all, when there were too many fire-immortal fish for Han Fei to avoid, he had to face them head-on. But who would have thought that Han Fei would stab his spear into the ground? Even Chang Shui-Qin was stunned for a moment. This guy really dared to come. Bam! A terrifying explosion blasted up, and Han Fei didn't know if he had pierced through anything. In short, he felt that his flesh and blood were beginning to melt. The terrifying airwave directly sent him flying. At that moment, a thought came to Han Fei's mind. When the temperature reached a certain degree, it was no longer liquid, but gas. For example, Han Fei also felt that what hit him was the temperature of the airwaves, which was suddenly almost 50% higher than the temperature of the lava. Swish! The moment Han Fei was sent flying, his body was badly mutilated. At that moment, he used the closed-distance technique and was dozens of kilometers away in one step. He was hit by 8 void cracks in a row before he escaped into the sky. Many people were worried about him. However, Chang Shui-Qin's eyes lit up. As the saying goes, those who are skilled are bold. This should be true for someone like Han Fei. Of course, the consequences of Han Fei's willfulness were not small. It was like a ball being poked with a hole in it. A massive amount of scorching gas rushed into the lava lake. In an instant, the lava lake began to stir violently. Han Fei looked back, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Something seemed to be wrong. Looking at the rapidly rising airflow, he was a little dumbfounded. It seemed that he had accidentally poked a volcano and caused it to erupt. Chapter 1320. Xiang was one of the top heavenly talents at the peak of the Sea Spirit realm in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Because she was good at assassination, she was known as one of the 3 demon spikes in flames in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. After observing the lava lake for about 5 minutes, Xiang found that the magma here was particularly violent. This meant that there would be some deviant flames in the magma. For fire cultivators, alien flames were their favorite kind of power. Because it was a special power between heaven and earth, it was particularly powerful in battle. Huh, why are there no creatures here? Xiang was a little confused. Logically speaking, others might not be very clear, but as fire elementalists, they naturally knew that there were quite a lot of living creatures in the magma at the bottom of the sea. Therefore, when Xiang dove nearly 100 kilometers down and found that there was not a single creature here, she immediately became vigilant and felt her scalp go numb. Xiang's heart trembled. Did I enter the forbidden area of some powerful creature? Otherwise, how could there be no creatures here? Besides, when I chose to come to this area, Master Yinshu didn't say that it was extremely dangerous here. Just when Xiang was hesitating, should I continue to dive down? With a bang, there seemed to be a lament from the earth's core and a muffled roar of a giant beast. Immediately afterward, Xiang found that the surrounding temperature began to rise at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it had risen by hundreds of degrees. Then, she saw fire immortal fish rushing over. Huh? Is it a riot? At first glance, Xiang noticed that something was wrong. This was the precursor of a volcanic eruption, but wasn't it too fast? In the blink of an eye, the temperature began to soar by hundreds of degrees. Not good. Xiang was shocked to find that the temperature of the magma was rising at an incredible speed. The magma was also surging upwards. In the blink of an eye, Xiang was about to retreat. However, when she just swam up more than 50 kilometers, she found a figure appearing in her perception. Who? How can he be faster than me? Swish! The speed of the impact of the airwaves was the speed of this volcanic eruption. Terrifying energy was squeezing out crazily. Han Fei wanted to escape directly, but he found the blood demon on the way. Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes lit up. He was just about to find a blood demon, and someone came to him. A spirit-stunning stab was aimed at his opponent's divine soul, and an instant profound spear was prepared to pierce through his opponent's physical body. Xiang's reaction was extremely fast. A red bead immediately appeared in front of her to block the attack. With a clang, Han Fei's soul-stunning spike was completely blocked. Flame barrier. In the next moment, a flaming shield seemed to be summoned from the magma. Crack! After all, they were not on the same level of power. At this moment, Han Fei didn't adhere to the principle of competing with others in the same realm. Therefore, at this moment, facing a peak sea spirit with the strength of the early Tao-seeking state, how could he feel any pressure at all? The flaming shield shattered in an instant, unable to block the instant mystic spear at all. What made Han Fei a little depressed was that although he had a deeper understanding of the God-stunning spike, he was still not as powerful as before. After all, his soul had been greatly weakened, and it was blocked by a soul-type secret treasure of the peak-level sea spirit. What surprised Han Fei even more was that countless tadpole-like spells appeared on this woman's body. As soon as the spell was dispelled, Han Fei clearly saw that the blood of this blood demon was several times stronger than before. The old turtle said, "This is a kind of life burning. At the cost of vitality and flesh, you can exert several times your own strength in a short period of time." Huh! Han Fei's eyes turned cold. No matter how strong a peak-level sea spirit was, it was still a peak-level sea spirit. Only when one reached the Tao-seeking state could one realize how big the gap between the two was. If it were an ordinary person, Xiang's sudden outburst could help her escape. Unfortunately, what she encountered was a top heavenly talent who was stronger than her. Xiang didn't want to fight, but Han Fei naturally wouldn't give up. He activated the close distance technique. In this spatial state, Han Fei did such a dangerous thing, showing his determination to kill. Xiang directly threw out the protective red leaves and blew them up with a bang. At the same time, she shouted, "Don't force me to go through the tribulation." Han Fei looked down, shook the muzzle, and the spear spun, activating the heaven-knocking gate again. Puff! The red leaves burst into pieces, and the armor cracked. The tribulation clouds in the sky had begun to gather. However, Han Fei ignored them and directly stabbed out with his spear. And at the bottom of the lava lake, the scorching gas bursting up had made the temperature of the lava lake soar a lot. Xiang and Han Fei were both wrapped in it. Han Fei did it on purpose. For him, the temperature was much cooler than the underground temperature. But Xiang was different. She was pierced by Han Fei's spear and was hit by the terrifying temperature. In just an instant, nearly half of her body was burned. Han Fei stepped in front of her, reached out, grabbed a sun moon shell, and punched it. At the last moment, Han Fei really wanted to stab Xiang with the void lines and steal a wisp of soul power. However, he was afraid that countless people would watch and he would be exposed. So, he gave up in the end. Outside the island, Chang Shui-Qin smiled. Well, not bad. Yunchu's face was slightly cold. The Fish Dragon King just took a little advantage. Otherwise, it's hard to say who will kill the fish. Chang Shui-Qin said, "Well, sometimes luck is also a part of strength. That mountain is going to erupt." Chang Shui-Qin's meaning was easy to understand. A volcano eruption would definitely cause a lot of noise. They were all heavenly talents, so it was impossible that they didn't notice it. Bam! Boom! Han Fei had already run out and stood proudly in the air, near the crater, watching the huge tongue of fire that burst out with a bang. This was the first time that Han Fei had seen a volcano eruption. Han Fei didn't move at all. Even if there were scattered magma fireballs smashing at him, he didn't seem to see them. When the fireballs were within 3 meters of him, they were shattered by the demonic chi on his body surface. Han Fei asked, "Old tortoise, am I making too much noise? I didn't protect the place with chaotic heavenly secrets, and I didn't find any treasures. Instead, I attracted a lot of attention. What a loss." The old turtle said, "Only in the place with chaotic heavenly secrets will there be real big opportunities. If it's not here, it will eventually show up in someone else's place. Although the mountain eruption is noisy, it can't disturb the heavenly secrets. You can look for the alien fire. If you can't find it, you can go somewhere else." Han Fei said, "I can still wait for others." Holding the sun-moon shell that he had just snatched, Han Fei scanned it with his perception and found a lot of spiritual fruits and spiritual springs. There were some big bones and strange stones inside, which should be prepared for forging some kind of weapon. Putting aside the 2 treasure maps, Han Fei's heart suddenly froze. In this batch of resources, there were as many as 3 red balls. The red ball was the product of the big red trunk. For some creatures, the red ball was a super tonic. For example, mysterious creatures like the hexagon starfish would not be affected by the red ball. Mysterious creatures like Little Black and Little White could also swallow the red ball. However, all the humans that Han Fei had seen who had swallowed the red ball had become Millennium Snappers anyway. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Although he didn't find the place with chaotic heavenly secrets, he got the red ball, which was another kind of opportunity. As for what he was going to use the red ball for, of course, he was going to use the identity of the Fish Dragon King. Before killing the Fish Dragon King, Han Fei had thought that it would be a pity to kill the Fish Dragon King, who was a heavenly talent after all. If he could make him work for him, that would be a wonderful thing. Of course, the main reason was that Han Fei felt that he couldn't sneak into the Blood-Sea Divinewood City. After all, he really couldn't become a woman. But the Fish Dragon King could, because his life was in Han Fei's hands. Han Fei threw the sun-moon shell into Forge the Universe. He fished out dozens of spiritual fruits, crushed them, and swallowed them, seeming to be doing a simple recovery. Bam! 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 At this moment, magma spurted 7 or 8 kilometers high. The volcanic cloud had already erupted more than 30 kilometers high. The height of the magma shouldn't be too high. However, the volcanic cloud was rising rapidly. Half of the mountaintop exploded, and the earth began to tremble. The roaring sound rippled in the air. Han Fei felt that his ears were almost deafened. In the distance, in the swamp, in the river, in the mountains, in many places, people suddenly raised their heads and looked in the direction of the volcanic eruption. Zhang Xiaotian exclaimed, "What a powerful force!" Feeling the trembling under her feet, Yang Riyun frowned slightly. "What a big noise! Is it the birth of a rare treasure?" The Bugman, Han Fei, scratched his head slightly, turned around, and rushed to the place where the volcanic eruption was. At this moment, at least 10 people were rushing in the direction where Han Fei was. As for the rest, it was not that they didn't want to go, but that they couldn't. They were already in trouble. After a full half an hour, Han Fei suddenly saw a purple-red flame at the crater that had long been blown up. Han Fei frowned. "An alien flame?" Han Fei immediately said, "Can this thing be stored in the sun-moon shell?" The old turtle nodded. "An alien flame is active. Even if you can put it in the sun-moon shell, that space can't hold its power. You can try to absorb this power yourself." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Do you think I haven't absorbed an alien flame? Back then, a single fish fire burned me for 3 days and 3 nights, almost burning me to death." Ooh. Han Fei took a breath and asked, "How is this alien flame compared to the blue sea ice sand?" The old turtle was silent for a while. "It should be less than 1 in 10,000. Han Fei. Chapter 13:21. After all, it was also an active flame. Although it wasn't as powerful as the legendary fire seed, it was worth taking as long as it was as powerful as the fish fire. Han Fei took a step forward, trying to feel the power of the alien fire with his void hand. However, before Han Fei's void hand touched the alien fire, he saw a purple glow burning half of the sky and burning his palm. Immediately, Han Fei's eyes glittered. Not only was the alien fire active, but it had also developed intelligence. The old turtle also said it's stronger than it looks. Seeing that the purple fire could stop him, Han Fei took action in person. Just now, he didn't even die from the heat when he burst the bottom of the lava lake. How could a mere alien fire be so strong? Pucci. When Han Fei reached into the purple glow, his hand began to smoke. His skin and flesh were quickly heating up. However, Han Fei's arm shook, demonic chi surged, and a golden dragon roared. Put on. Han Fei didn't care if others saw him. Even if Chang Shui-Qin and the others had some questions, how could he resist the alien fire? They would only ask him after 7 days had passed, and he had really returned to Baibei Royal City. If he didn't go back, who would they ask? This time, Han Fei had made up his mind. He was going to make a successful retreat. The Baibei Royal City was different from when he was in the 10,000 Demon Valley. In the 10,000 Demon Valley, the strongest expert, Blue Feather, was only at the peak level of Dao Seeking. But there were too many strong experts in the Baibei Royal City. He was only at the Dao Seeking state. Even with the help of Little Black and Little White, he couldn't steal under their noses. So, it was meaningless to stay in the Baibei Royal City. Therefore, at this moment, Han Fei launched a strong attack and showed some more powerful physical strength. He grabbed the purple fire with one hand. Han Fei roared, "Now that you're in my hands, you can't escape no matter how powerful you are." Huh! The dragon roared and Han Fei forcibly shattered the wisp of consciousness that was born in the alien fire. Sure enough, after a slight struggle, the purple fire settled down. Only then did Han Fei loosen his hand, because the hand that was holding the purple flame had begun to burn. The volcano was still erupting crazily, and the temperature was still extremely high. However, Han Fei slapped out a platform beside the crater of the volcano. He sat cross-legged on it, holding the strange flame in his hand, and began to cultivate. He was actually forcefully absorbing this energy. Seeing this, the Insect King thought to himself, "Is Han Fei also so high-profile in the White Shell Kingdom? That's a heavenly flame, not a cabbage. If you swallow it casually, won't you attract the attention of the venerables in Baibei capital city?" Zhang Shui-Qin's expression turned slightly cold. He had some doubts in his heart. Logically speaking, the level of the mystical flame should not be too far from the Thunder Vein spirit. The Ichthyosaur King could take down the mystical flame, but not the Thunder Vein spirit? Could it be that he was hiding his strength? However, this alien fire seemed to have just developed spiritual consciousness and was still far from being a powerful spiritual fire, so it was not a big deal that it was so easily subdued by Han Fei. However, what puzzled the onlookers was that Han Fei didn't leave after taking the alien fire. Was he waiting for someone to come? In the eyes of these people, and even Zhang Shui-Qin, Han Fei should know his limits. After all, this was not the time to be willful. Those who came were all heavenly talents, and none of them was much weaker than anyone else. In Zhang Shui-Qin's opinion, the Ichthyosaur King was too proud. He seemed to be waiting for someone to come and then fighting. Where did his confidence come from? What made Zhang Shui-Qin most unhappy was that he had already told him that Han Fei was very dangerous. Do you really think they won't come after you've made such a big noise? They're already on their way. While the outside world was watching the show, Han Fei was swallowing the alien fire happily. Although he couldn't let Little Black and Little White appear in the outside world, they were not affected and forged the universe. Nominally, he was swallowing the alien fire, but in fact, he was crazily absorbing the power of the alien fire into forge the universe. The only thing that made Han Fei a little uncomfortable was that he couldn't absorb too fast, otherwise he would look like a monster. In fact, for Little Black, Han Fei's supply of alien fire was too slow, and it wasn't enough for him to eat it all. Half a day later, Han Fei was still sitting cross-legged, and the alien fire had shrunk to half its size. But in other places, there were also changes happening. The first place that something happened was in the direction of the spiritual orchard. Above the sky over there, a big mouth seemed to appear. Han Fei couldn't see through the void, but he could feel the energy right there. The rolling spiritual energy around seemed to be moving in that direction. In addition to the big movement, in a place that Han Fei couldn't see, Zhang Xiaotian collided with a tree man of the Shimu heaven. The two sides fought in the swamp. In the end, a part of the tree man's root ran away. After a while, it appeared in the sky and was the first heavenly talent to leave the battlefield. For the Shuemu heaven, every heavenly talent was extremely precious. They must have been warned when they came. Life was the most important thing. If they missed the opportunity, they would miss it. If they lost their life, they would really be gone. Therefore, for the experts of the Shimu heaven, they didn't have any inner demons about this kind of escape, because if they were defeated, they would have a chance if they survived. However, the luck of the Shuemu heaven wasn't too good, was it? This time, the only expert of the sky race who came was ambushed by two blood demons, sealed by spells, and died on this island. While all sides were fighting or searching for treasures, the green silk spirit of the White Shell King City found a withered tomb on a plain. Whether consciously or unconsciously, all the people on the island were subtly moving closer to this withered tomb. However, in the eyes of the outside world, even in the eyes of the White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen, there was no withered tomb on this island at all. When the green silk spirit approached the withered tomb, what appeared in the eyes of the venerables and kings was that the green silk spirit had fallen into a large array and had nothing to do with the withered tomb. On the island, although it was impossible to escape into the void, everyone's speed was not slow. For example, someone came to the crater at this moment. When they looked at each other, Han Fei found that the person turned out to be Su Yi, who ranked 10th on the heavenly talent list. This new heavenly talent was also stunned when he saw Han Fei. Then, looking at the strange fire in Han Fei's hand, he knew that the opportunities here must have been taken by Han Fei. So he asked, "Dragon King, do you want to come with me?" Han Fei shook his head. "No, I still need to refine this fire." Sui nodded. "Okay, then I'll go first." In this case, Han Fei naturally couldn't attack the so-called family now. Not long after Su Yi left, a bug that was burning with flames rushed to the crater. When they looked at each other again, Han Fei grabbed the strange fire and got up, but the bug turned around and fled. Han Fei thought to himself, "Wouldn't it look too fake if I don't even fight?" Outside, Chang Shui Qin glanced at the Bug King and asked with slight confusion, "Bug King, aren't you bugs never afraid of death? Why did you stop fighting when you saw the Fish Dragon King?" The Bug King said lightly, "We bugs are always fearless and live for death. However, the Fish Dragon King is a heavenly talent from the Baibei Royal City after all. How can I not know how strong he is?" Not long after the bug ran away, another blood demon rushed over. Similarly, seeing Han Fei who was refining the strange fire, this person frowned slightly as if he wanted to challenge him, but he seemed to remember something and quietly retreated. However, this person didn't really retreat very far, only 100 kilometers away. Surrounded by runes and runes, he finally disappeared in this place where the magma flowed. Seeing this move of the heavenly talent of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, Chang Shui Qin and the Bug King both smiled disdainfully. In this kind of battle, of course, they would fight if they could win, and if they couldn't, they would just leave. Hiding and looking for opportunities, the possibility of success was not very high. Their strength was not much higher. Since they couldn't kill them instantly, what was the point of ambushing them? Besides, there was such a big commotion here, and there would still be other people coming. If they were discovered, they wouldn't be able to run even if they wanted to. As for Han Fei himself, he pretended to be refining the strange fire, so he didn't take the initiative to attack, which was also reasonable. However, when there was about a third of the strange fire left to be absorbed, a figure that Han Fei didn't expect appeared. This person was the fake bug man, Han Fei, who pretended to be him. The moment he saw this bug man, Han Fei suddenly stood up, holding the strange fire in his hand, as if he was facing a formidable enemy, but he didn't run away. Seeing this scene, Chang Shui Qin snorted softly. This fish dragon king is a bit disobedient. If he could survive this, there would be no need to beat him up. He would immediately know the immensity of heaven and earth. When Han Fei and the Bugman met, their auras rose rapidly, and there was even a golden dragon hovering beside Han Fei. Their eyes met, and Han Fei felt that a voice suddenly sounded in the bottom of his heart. The Bugman said, "Where did you hide my master?" Hiss! Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. F***CKU. What does this mean? Isn't a Bugman? Han Fei had always thought that the Bugman should be an independent individual. Han Fei even felt a little sorry for the plan to replace the Bugman. However, it seemed that it was the Life Queen who was in charge of this body. The Life Queen said, "Don't show any expression. I guess you would choose the spiritual orchard. I've been waiting there for a long time. I didn't expect you to come here." Han Fei responded, "Is it okay to say that?" The Life Queen said, "I'm here, so I can say it. Remember, there is a plane more than 10,000 kilometers away in the northwest, and there is something wrong there. The weather is not stable. Go there. I've disturbed the heavenly secrets and blocked the sight of those people outside. Take the opportunity to change back." Chapter 13:22. Han Fei was dumbfounded. So it's that simple? Even the place where the heavenly secrets are in disorder has been found for me. Just waiting for him to go. Han Fei was speechless. It was all the old turtle's fault. He had already chosen the spiritual orchard. In the end, this guy just had to mess up his thoughts and make him come to this volcano. Thankfully, the Life Queen had come to him in person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have found a chance to find himself. Han Fei said, "I see. However, the identity of the Ichthyosaur King can't be taken lightly. I need to put on a show for others to see the Ichthyosaur King fall." "Why? Attack first, we'll talk as we fight." Whoosh! As the Life Girl stretched out her hand, the blood-drinking knife on her waist flew out, and the draw technique swept across the sky and earth. Han Fei's scalp went numb. Holy **T. A king's attack is indeed different. How did you learn my F***King best combat technique? Han Fei retreated into the thick smoke that was still spewing out, and then he shot back with his spear. Bang! The terrifying explosion ripples directly tore apart the thick smoke. The Life Queen said, "These smoke barriers can't escape the eyes of venerables and kings at all. What's the use of your identity?" Han Fei stomped on the magma, performed the closed distance technique, and moved 1,000 meters away with a swish. The Life Queen, on the other hand, flew at high speed, manipulating the lava into thousands of blades to follow her. The two of them brushed past each other and almost collided. In the White Shell Kingdom, someone needs to be saved and 2 pawns need to be planted. I need a place with chaotic heavenly secrets to help me conceal this opportunity. I have a cloning technique. When the time comes, I will have a way to let the identity of the Fish Dragon King leave safely. As soon as Han Fei said that, he pushed out part of the alien fire in his hand and detonated it. Boom! The flames erupted once again. The terrifying power of the deviant flame knocked the two of them away. With the recoil, Han Fei quickly rushed northwest without looking back. Han Fei replied in the end, "I'm fine. Let's talk about it another day." His conversation with the Queen of Life was over. As long as there was a moment of concealment, he could use the Gemini divine arts. By then, wouldn't the Ichthyosaur King's exit be a matter of course? In the eyes of outsiders, the confrontation between Han Fei and the Life Queen was a different story. When the two of them first met, they were accumulating their strength, wanting to kill each other in one fell swoop. In the end, the Fish Dragon King realized that it was no match for him. At that moment, Bugman Han Fei roughly estimated the strength of the Fish Dragon King. He chased after it, intending to stop the Fish Dragon King with speed and the power of the Million Knife art. However, the Ichthyosaur King had the close distance technique. It forcefully used the closed distance technique despite the attack from the cracks in space. As a result, the two of them passed by each other again. At this moment, the ichthyosaur king realized that it was obviously no match for Jiangyi. It ignited the remaining mystical flame in its hand. Borrowing the terrifying force of the explosion, he quickly escaped. In this series of battles, there were actually only 2 attacks. However, both sides were extremely direct and efficient. They didn't hold back when they made their moves. Seeing this, Chang Shui-Qin's eyes lit up. Although it was obvious that the Fish Dragon King was no match for Han Fei, in terms of reaction speed and fighting style, the two were very similar. The Bug King deliberately frowned, as if surprised that Bugman Han Fei failed to kill the Fish Dragon King in one fell swoop. Chang Shui-Qin said, "Bug King, aren't you expecting too much from him?" The Bug King snorted softly. "Let's wait and see." As soon as the Bug King's voice fell, he saw Bugman Han Fei, who had just stabilized his body and was about to chase after him. However, his figure suddenly stopped in midair. He waved his kitchen knife, and the draw technique appeared again. With a wave of his hand, there were void threads directly in all directions. And the heavenly talent of the Blood-Sea Divine Wood City, who was lying in ambush nearby and preparing to sneak attack the Fish Dragon King, even thought that when the Sandpiper and the Clam fought, the fisherman would benefit, who knew that as soon as the two of them fought, he would be the one exposed. Puff! This move was even more powerful than the draw technique. For a moment, the blood demon felt that his soul was not his own. He froze there and was directly cut by Bugman Han Fei. When Bugman Han Fei grabbed the man's Sun Moon shell and wanted to chase after him, the real Han Fei had already flown hundreds of kilometers away and disappeared from sight. Of course, in this case, it was not impossible to chase after him. However, the Fish Dragon King was good at speed, so everyone felt that it would take a lot of effort for Han Fei to catch up with it. Outside the island, in midair, the Bug King said lightly, "Of course Han Fei is strong. If there is another chance, I'm afraid that even the Fish Dragon King won't be able to escape." Chang Shui-Qin didn't speak at the moment. A blood demon was easily killed. This was nothing in itself. It didn't seem to show any special skills. However, no one was a fool. If he was not a top heavenly talent, how could he be qualified to come to this island? How could he plan to sneak attack the Fish Dragon King? This island was rich in opportunities, which could be seen from the lava lake. It could be said that countless undersea volcanoes in the waterwood heavens might not be able to find an alien fire. Besides, although Han Fei seemed to blow up the alien fire just now, there were very few people who could do this. In fact, there were very, very few people who could do this. Of course, if a fire cultivator got Han Fei's alien fire, his strength might increase exponentially. When Han Fei flew past this barren land of volcanoes, he discovered that the space was filled with cracks of various sizes. There were many more than when he first arrived. He didn't know if it was because he had burst the volcano that the void was so unstable. At most a kilometer away, he had to prevent a void crack from suddenly appearing. When he ran just now, Han Fei used the fish dragon dance. In order to show that he had fled in panic, he had allowed himself to be slashed by a few spatial rifts, causing his entire body to be drenched in blood. Only then did he barely manage to escape. 1,000 kilometers away, Han Fei landed on the ground and began to run wildly. After all, relatively speaking, the ground was safer. The premise was that he didn't break into any messy territory. Unfortunately, it was almost impossible not to break into messy places. Han Fei had just sprinted 100 kilometers on the ground when he rushed into a sea of colorful flowers. Son of AB *T6. Han Fei's face darkened. It was not because he was speechless when he encountered the sea of flowers, but because half of the sea of flowers were actually big butterflies. Some butterflies opened their wings, and some closed their wings, looking like a sea of flowers. There were also a lot of big butterflies gathered together, so they became a bouquet of flowers. Han Fei even saw a flower with 6 colors, which was a weird flower formed by many butterflies. This scene reminded Han Fei of the underground city. However, what he met there were big moths, while what he met here were butterflies, but there was not much difference. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name 9-color mandarin duck butterfly introduction, an ancient big butterfly that lives in the passion flowers. They are the same species and have 9 colors. When the 9 colors gather, they have extremely high spiritual power and can create a 9-color poison barrier and illusion cage. As for the sea of passion flowers, they will fall into endless illusions. Level 68, quality rare, contains spiritual energy 2,0881 points. Effect, inedible, collectible, 9-color poison, absorbable. As soon as he saw this information, Han Fei immediately thought of the moon-tailed giant silkworm moth. All of them used poison, and all of them had extremely high spiritual power. Needless to say, he would be at a disadvantage if he tried to break through here, especially when his soul power was halved. If he used his own means as a spirit gatherer, he should have stepped out of the soul-driving array. However, now that he was the Fish Dragon King, he had to use the means of the Fish Dragon King to break through this sea of flowers. Han Fei took a step forward and used the closed distance technique again. Chang Shui-Qin's words had long since fallen on deaf ears, forgotten to the back of his mind. However, there was nothing he could do about it. The Fish Dragon King's law enforcement ability was the close distance technique. Closed distance technique. How frustrating would it be if he didn't use such a talent ability? However, as he took this step, a crack appeared in the void, and a large number of 9-color mandarin duck butterflies were alarmed by the slight wind. All of a sudden, they flapped their wings and flew up. It seemed that because of their high spiritual power, they immediately found Han Fei's location. And in order not to fall into the illusion of these butterflies, Han Fei could only use the closed distance technique faster and more frequently. After repeating this for more than 100 minutes, Han Fei saw the end of this sea of flowers, where clusters of 9-color flowers were blooming in the air. Roar! With a dragon roar, Han Fei held his spear and randomly chose a cluster of 9-color flowers with the soul-stunning thorn. In his mouth, the soul-suppressing roar of 100 beasts simulated the roar of a dragon. Bam! 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 After all, he was at the Tao-seeking state. It was easy for him to deal with some butterflies that hadn't even reached the peak level of sea spirit and had fragile bodies. The 9 colors exploded, and Han Fei shuttled through the blasted smoke. When he looked back again, he was already dozens of kilometers away. As if he had just experienced a trivial thing, Han Fei was about to continue moving forward, but after more than 100 kilometers, some white giant mushrooms made his face change slightly. Huh? Bowfoot umbrella spiders from the underground city? At a glance, Han Fei recognized that those mushrooms were not mushrooms at all, but spiders disguised as giant mushrooms, which he had met in the underground city. However, the level of the Bowfoot umbrella spiders was not high. Were they the same species as this spider? However, when he first saw the Bowfoot umbrella spiders, they had already reached level 59. They didn't seem to be much different from now. Han Fei wanted to take out his fishing hook and catch one to have a look. However, thinking that there were venerables and even kings peeping at him outside, he resisted the urge. Han Fei grinned and began to sprint. The Bowfoot umbrella spiders were leaping spiders. Although they had set many traps, they were suppressed by the Fish Dragon King's close-distance technique. Even without the closed-distance technique, the 64-dimensional Fish Dragon dance was enough to deal with them. In the end, if he had no choice, he could also fly through the sky. At this moment, Han Fei already had a guess in his heart. What was inside the Wall of Death? Why were there demonic plants and ferocious beasts in the underground city? Why were there thunder leopards? Perhaps this seal that had never been opened hid many shocking secrets, just waiting for people like him to uncover them. Chapter 1323. Along the way, Han Fei found that although this land was not the underground city, many creatures on it were still similar. At least, he could confirm one thing. That was, the underground city had never been discovered because it was hidden in a place that normal people could not reach at all. A terrifying territory that had been sealed for hundreds of thousands of years, the Wall of Death. Han Fei could even imagine how rich the resources in the Wall of Death were, and how fierce the demonic beasts were. After all, it was a place that no one had been able to reach for hundreds of thousands of years. It was isolated from the world, as if it was really a forbidden area for life. Han Fei didn't know if anyone had ever come out of it alive. It was said that once you entered this place, you wouldn't be able to come out. Fortunately, this time, a big island emerged from it, allowing people to see the situation inside. It seemed that there should be another world in this wall of death. It was like a kind of spatial magic weapon, just like the legendary painting wall, which contained the space in the painting. However, the wall of death was several times larger than the ordinary painting wall. After all, its territory was very vast, and it was a state that cut off the waterwood heaven. It was useless to think too much. It took Han Fei a full day to find the feeling he had when he first explored the underground city. In this world, every place was dangerous. But because this was a land, Han Fei was actually more familiar with this area than anyone else here. Because the island was full of dangers, even if Han Fei could keep flying in the air, it was only a short distance. Otherwise, no one could bear to face tens of thousands of space cracks over a distance of tens of thousands of kilometers. Besides, in some places, there were not only space cracks, but also large-scale space collapses and space turbulence. If you were not careful, you were likely to be involved. Even Han Fei spent a day to travel more than 10,000 kilometers and experienced no less than 100 battles. Every time, it could be said to be extremely dangerous. He had to admit that such an island was definitely a holy land for heavenly talents. Even Han Fei felt that his foundation was being rapidly polished. Although the process of these battles was relatively complicated, generally speaking, as long as he knew the direction, it was not too difficult for Han Fei to walk over. Han Fei thought that if he and Han Fei, the insect man, took the same route and walked straight to the northwest, they would probably be discovered. After all, how could two people have such tacit understanding? Did they collude in advance? However, the Life Queen seemed to have thought things through. Since she told him about the place where Tianji was disrupted, she should have a way to get there without being detected. After all, a king was much faster, and she could take many detours. Of course, for this group of Sky Prides, they had a total of 7 days to explore the island. As long as you wanted to go to more places, you could run around as much as you wanted. Therefore, it was possible for them to meet again there. A day and a half had passed. Even if the Life Queen came a few days later, it would be fine as long as she could make it in time. When Han Fei set foot on the grassland, the old turtle suddenly said, "This place is strange." Han Fei was slightly surprised. "Is there something wrong with the heavenly secrets here?" The old tortoise replied, "No, there's an ancient and decaying aura here." Han Fei didn't doubt the old turtle's feeling. As an emperor who had lived for tens of thousands of years, the old turtle felt ancient and decaying, so he had to take it seriously. If there was a guy as old as the old turtle in this area, Han Fei wouldn't believe it. If there really was such a powerful guy, wouldn't he have killed the Venerables who came to search the island? After all, this island had been explored by the Venerables. There was no reason for that ancient existence to deal with the explorers instead of the Venerables. Han Fei said, "I have to go in even if there's a problem. I'm afraid this is the only place on the island where I can change my identity. Besides, some Venerables have already explored it. Even if there is any special existence, I'm afraid it won't show up under so many people's gazes." When Han Fei walked into the grassland, the old turtle didn't stop him. In fact, he thought so too. He was just wondering why there was such a rotten smell here. After walking for 100 kilometers, Han Fei found that he was lost. Yes, his soul perception was only slightly off. When he tried again, he found that there was no way back behind him. At this moment, in all directions, there was grassland half the height of a person. This was not simple grass. The grass around him could also move. Han Fei felt that spiritual energy in his body was being sucked away from him. Spirit entangling grass? Han Fei clenched the spear with one hand and swept it out with a burst of demonic chi. A huge gully hundreds of meters long was drawn on the ground. However, what happened next made Han Fei's blood freeze. He saw that the ground was full of roots. The rhizome was full of roots, countless roots. They were like worms, wriggling gently in the ground, crazily absorbing the spiritual energy of the outside world. Hiss! Dead spirit grass. Han Fei felt as if he had been punched hard in the chest. Dead spirit grass was a kind of demonic plant that was very similar to the demon-shattering vine. At first, he didn't know much about demonic plants. When he encountered the demon-shattering vine, he only thought that this kind of creature grew too fast. As long as there was enough time, they could grow crazily. Under sufficient conditions, they could even cultivate as fast as an ordinary person for 100 years. How monstrous it was! In fact, when the water deity taught him, she mentioned another kind of demonic plant that was extremely terrifying in addition to the demon-shattering vine. That was the dead spirit grass. It was said that the dead spirit grass was an extremely rare demonic plant. Wherever there was the dead spirit grass, it must have been a place of disaster. Different from the demon-shattering vine that grew in water, the dead spirit grass was a kind of spiritual plant that took root on corpses. As long as the corpse was strong enough when it was alive, the dead spirit grass that took root on it would be stronger. According to the legend, the dead spirit grass could be integrated with the corpse of a strong master, which could reverse the natural law and bring the dead back to life. However, even the water deity couldn't be sure about the legend. It was just that it was better to believe that it was true than not. Han Fei found that the grassland under his feet might not be a grassland at all, but was full of dead spirit grass. How powerful must this creature be to be able to nurture such a large area of dead spirit grass? In the crack that he tore open, the dead spirit grass was intertwining and the soil was turning over. The ground was slowly healing. Han Fei frowned slightly. Han Fei took a deep breath and said, "Old Yuan, do you know this kind of demonic plant?" The old turtle's voice was also slightly gloomy. "Yes, the dead spirit grass. I'm afraid there is something very dangerous here. I understand now. It's not that they deliberately let this place go, but that they don't know the dead spirit grass at all. So, they don't know that the dead spirit grass is a kind of symbiotic grass." Han Fei frowned. "Is the dead spirit grass famous?" The old turtle said, "As long as you live long enough, you can recognize many things. After all, no matter how many creatures there are in the world, they are limited." Han Fei asked, "Even the king can't find the danger of this grassland?" The old turtle asked, "What if the king doesn't know the dead spirit grass? Don't forget, these two worlds are separated by the wall of death. Even the king born in the water with heaven has never seen the land. How can he know this strange demonic plant? Besides, the dead spirit grass generally has no offensive characteristics." Han Fei looked back and thought, "I'm lost. Why doesn't it have any offensive characteristics?" On the grassland. Looking at the grassland, Chang Shui-Chin was deep in thought. This grassland seems to be weird. However, even the imperial capital had checked this place, and there was nothing special about it. There was nothing special hidden under those worm-like roots, so they weren't very aggressive. Except for dozens of incomplete ancient arrays, there seems to be nothing special on this grassland. As for those ancient array remnants, Chang Shui-Chin had personally cracked one and found that it was just an old and decayed ancient cave house. Inside, there were some remnants of opportunities and murals, but there was no way to examine them. It was for this reason that they let this grassland exist. However, Chang Shui-Chin was also puzzled. The green silk spirit has been trapped in the array in the center of this grassland for more than a day. Why hasn't she come out yet? This array doesn't seem so difficult to crack, does it? Han Fei used the closed distance technique on this dead spirit grass and found that there were very few space cracks here, which made him feel safe. Soon, only a moment later, Han Fei found an incomplete ancient array on this vast grassland. "Huh? A broken array?" Han Fei frowned. "Do you think you can stop me with this?" Just when he was about to break this broken ancient array, he couldn't help but be speechless. The Fish Dragon King didn't know much about arrays. After looking around the array several times, Han Fei had an idea. This was actually a combination of a defensive array, a concealment array, a spirit gathering array, and a killing array. Chilla. Suddenly, while Han Fei was looking at the array here, his eyebrows trembled, and he quickly retreated. In the broken array, a cold knife light directly cut through the void, as if it wanted to cut Han Fei in half with one slash. Han Fei took a step and retreated. But, with a swish, a red shadow stuck to him 1 meter in front of him. This person held a long knife and slashed from the bottom up again. Han Fei was about to retreat again, but he found that this was a lock-on technique. And this knife cut through the void. It would appear again the moment he retreated. Huh! Han Fei roared, and the golden dragon shadow burst out, hitting this knife. The terrifying explosion had pulverized the surrounding grassland for dozens of miles. Han Fei took the opportunity to retreat, thinking quickly in his heart. A woman? She was undoubtedly a blood demon from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. She was extremely strong, extremely fast, had a terrifying physical body, fierce combat power, and was good at knife techniques. Her attacks were extremely ruthless and deadly. As soon as Han Fei retreated, the woman appeared again. But this time, 2 identical people appeared. There was a terrifying knife mark on each side of Han Fei, shattering the void. Han Fei didn't panic. He had never been afraid of close combat. He stepped on the fish dragon dance and turned the spear from his waist. In an instant, a vortex storm appeared with Han Fei as the center. Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, after hundreds of slashes, the woman seemed to find that she couldn't break Han Fei's rod technique. Therefore, she changed her method of fighting quickly. After a slight pause, the long knife in her hand turned into a 100-meter-long knife shadow and slashed down. Knock on the heavenly gate. Han Fei grinned and pushed the spear out of his palm, without fear on his face. Boom! The violent air waves instantly crushed dozens of kilometers away. Under Han Fei's feet, a big pit was shaken out. But Han Fei didn't panic at all. Tens of meters away from the ground, he looked at the woman who was dragging the knife on the ground and sneered. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head and glanced at Han Fei, her eyes indifferent to the extreme. Blood Sea Divine Wood City, Tangyue. "Who are my sister?" Chapter 1324. Looking at Tang Yu, who was holding a long knife not far in front of him, Han Fei was speechless. Why did he kill a younger brother and a younger sister in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, and then his older brother and sister came to kill him one by one? What kind of luck was this? However, different from Yu Guang, this Tang Yu was shockingly strong. Her melee combat ability was actually one of the best in Han Fei's eyes. Vaguely, Han Fei felt that this Tang Yu was a heavenly talent on the same level as Zhang Xiaotian. Han Fei raised his spear in front of him. "How did you know I was coming?" Looking at the ancient array not far away, Han Fei remembered that Tang Yu should also be proficient in arrays. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to hide in the array and sneak attack him. Tang Yu said straightforwardly, "There are only about 50 people on this island. It's normal to meet anyone. Since you're here, let's settle the accounts." Swish! It seemed that she didn't want to chat with Han Fei any longer. Tang Yu held the knife with both hands, and there were runes floating on the blade. The moment she slashed out with her saber, rows of saber waves appeared in the air like raging ocean waves. Clang, clang, clang. Han Fei fought back with the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. The two of them swept and ran on the grassland, like ghosts, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Pung, pung, pung. Sounds of explosions could be heard as the battle continued for several hundred kilometers. Han Fei was more and more sure that although this Tang Yu was not as strong as Zhang Xiaotian, the strength she showed was a little stronger than the Fish Dragon King that he disguised as. Besides, as a woman, a Millennium Snapper, a race that shouldn't be good at melee combat or physique cultivation, this woman actually broke all the conventions. This woman had actually broken all the rules. In terms of strength, she could even match up to the power that he had displayed. This also meant that although Tang Yu had just entered the Dao-seeking state, her strength had reached about 150 waves, not much worse than his when he was at the beginning. Besides, such a bloody, violent, and brutal fighting style was definitely tempered on the edge of life and death. For Han Fei, this was not very strong. However, For the Fish Dragon King, this was a terrifying enemy. The two sides fought for more than 300 rounds, and Han Fei deliberately exposed dozens of flaws, leaving a dozen knife wounds on his body. Of course, Han Fei was not completely helpless. He also left 5 traces of spear light on Tang Yu's body. Outside the island, Chang Shui-Qin said, "Yinshu, you guys are really willing to invest this time. You even sent out a prodigy of this level?" Yinshu said indifferently, "The elites of my Blood Sea Divine with City have never feared anyone. Looks like that arrogant Fish Dragon King is just SOSO." The Bug King snorted and looked at a figure that was passing by the river. Both Chang Shui-Qin and Yinshu were taken aback. It seemed that Han Fei was also heading west. In their opinion, after Bugman Han Fei and the Fish Dragon King separated, the Fish Dragon King went to the northwest and Bugman Han Fei went to the swamp because he was too lazy to chase after it. Then, from the swamp to the river, he even fought an ancient python along the way. But now, the direction changed again, this time to the west. Chang Shui-Qin couldn't help but feel a little surprised. It seemed that the distribution of people on the battlefield was a little skewed. Unbeknownst to him, it had actually shifted towards the center and the west. Not only Han Fei, but 7 or 8 other people also moved to the west. This caused the 3 venerable ones to look to the west several times. They were only relieved when they confirmed that there was nothing special going on the prairie in the west. Because the two of them were evenly matched, although Han Fei seemed to be defeated, it was unrealistic for Tang Yue to kill Han Fei. After all, on this prairie, the close distance technique was not very restricted, and there were fewer void cracks, so Han Fei had an advantage in speed. After finally getting rid of Tang Yue with his speed, Han Fei encountered another broken ancient array. This time, this array was more thoroughly broken than the previous one. There was actually a crack visible to the naked eye on the formation. Han Fei told himself, "Just hold on for one more day. When the Life Queen arrives, it will be time for me to kill all the enemies." At this moment, Han Fei looked at this ancient array and said, "Old Yuan, did you say that this array can block the heavenly secrets?" The old turtle said, "This array is broken. It seems to have been split open by someone. What do you think? If it wasn't split open, it could conceal its aura and obstruct a venerable one's vision. Can it block the vision of a king? That depends on the power of this array itself." Han Fei drilled directly into this array, only to find that the space inside the array was not large, and there was only an old house on it. The building was already a little decayed, and the walls in some places had cracked. As he scanned with his perception, a sword intent was immediately born in the void, trying to cut off his perception. With a thought, Han Fei directly withdrew his perception, turned his hand, and stabbed out the god-stunning spike. Invisible waves burst out, but the shock wave didn't blow up the building. Han Fei stepped into the building. The broken array could only exert a little defensive power. This place had been explored, so its power was naturally weaker. Of course, it couldn't stop Han Fei. Sure enough, after entering the building, Han Fei found that this was like a place for ordinary people to cultivate and live. There was nothing good here. On the wall, some murals had been passed down. Han Fei glanced at them. They seemed to be describing, in ancient times, a strong master led a group of people to attack the universe. Wait. Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. What did he see? In the clouds in the sky, a huge dragon head poked out of the clouds. Behind it was the scene of a large number of strong masters fighting against the Azure Dragons. Besides, it was not 1 or 2 ancient Azure Dragons, but a F** King group. This, Han Fei immediately took a breath. "Old Yuan, are you familiar with the dragons? What's going on here?" The whole process of the murals was about the battle with the ancient Azure Dragons. Both sides seemed to have suffered losses. In the end, the dragon, the strongest leader, died in the wilderness. In the end, Han Fei could only see a withered grave in this wilderness. The old turtle was silent for a long time and seemed to have mixed feelings. He said slowly, "The dragons, Han Fei." The old turtle said, "That's a terrifying race. In the countless years of my life, There have always been legends of the dragon race. As for the dragons that appeared here, I don't know. Han Fei asked in surprise. What? They've lived longer than you? Humph. This is an unparalleled great race. Its history can be traced back to the primeval times. All kinds of deeds have long been buried in the dust of history. Han Fei was a little stunned. What was the primeval times? He had never heard of it. However, it certainly had a long history. However, what surprised Han Fei was that there were dragons among the thousands of races. What made Han Fei even more surprised was that it didn't seem that the dragons were fighting against sea demons, but human beings. Were humans fighting against dragons? Was there any conflict between the two sides? Han Fei thought for a moment. There should be more than one ancient array on this grassland to suppress such a large area of dead spirit grass. It was time for him to look for other ancient formations. The old turtle said, I think it's better if you don't run around. Wait for the Life Queen. Han Fei asked, what's wrong? The old turtle said, don't you think that desolate grave is a bit weird? Could it be on this grassland? Han Fei grinned. That's impossible. So many venerables and even kings have swept this grassland. Even the Life Queen asked me to come here. How many tens of thousands of years old could it still be there? I ate it. Han Fei didn't panic at all. Even if he met Tang Yu again, he would just chase and fight. Tang Yu didn't have the ability to kill him. In terms of speed, with the closed distance technique, he was still slightly faster. Besides, this grassland seemed to have the ability to make people get lost. At least, when he chased it just now, he found that Tang Yu disappeared. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care about being discovered by Tang Yu. So, half an hour later, Han Fei looked at a desolate grave hundreds of meters away in front of him, dumbfounded, and his blood froze. The old turtle said leisurely, Are you going to eat it? Shoot! Han Fei immediately wanted to retreat. Was there anything more horrifying than this? The kings had swept this grassland. Didn't they find this desolate grave? Besides, it appeared 2F** king randomly, didn't it? He was just casually walking around and wanted to continue looking for two more dilapidated ancient formations to take a look at. How did he encounter such a thing? The old turtle said, maybe it's not that they haven't swept this grassland, but that even the kings can't find it at all. The Great Way is changeable. The kings are just the beginning of the Great Way. There are still many things that they can't see. Han Fei took a step back, trying to retreat. However, something even more horrifying happened. The closed distance technique seemed to have failed. The distance between the grave and him didn't change at all. Wait, looking at the grass under his feet, Han Fei looked at the traces of being crushed in front of him, and his heart skipped a beat. It seemed that it was not the close distance technique that failed, but the grave was chasing him at the same frequency as him, which made him think that the close distance technique had failed. Han Fei had never encountered such a weird situation before. Did the one in the grave take a fancy to him? The old turtle said, Han Fei, boy, it seems that you don't have to wait for your junior sister. The heaven's secret here has changed, and people outside can't see what you're doing. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? The old turtle said, it means that you have now entered the wrong area. It's not that you have eaten the grave, but that it has eaten you. It's hard to say. Are you in the grave or outside the grave? Han Fei. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1325. Standing outside the tomb, Han Fei was horrified. He should have listened to the old turtle and gone out to look for the ancient array. Now, instead of finding the ancient array, he found the tomb that shouldn't have existed. Now, he couldn't even get rid of it. Gudu. Han Fei took a breath. Don't panic. I think I can stand here for a while and wait for the Life Queen to come. Han Fei didn't intend to approach the tomb. It would be good if he could maintain the current situation. At least he could buy himself some time. The old turtle had already said, the mysteries of heaven here have already been concealed. That meant that he could already summon Little Black and Little White. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, Little Black and Little White came out. With a thought, Han Fei stored Little Black into Forge the Universe. Now Han Fei had learned to be smart. In such a dangerous place, he had to be careful. It would be best if only one of Little Black or Little White appeared in the outside world. Looking at Little White, who was kissing his cheek affectionately, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Daughter, can you perceive any danger here?" Little White tilted his head and stared straight at the tomb, but in the end he said, "Dad, I can't feel it." "Huh? You can't feel it?" Han Fei was surprised. This was the first time that even Little White couldn't perceive the danger. With a thought, Han Fei summoned Little Fatty and threw it into Forge the Universe as a precaution. Han Fei subconsciously glanced at Forge the Universe. This was his habit. Anyway, his perception could observe the outside at any time. Therefore, Han Fei closed his eyes and glanced at Forge the Universe as naturally as blinking his eyes. However, in the blink of an eye, he suddenly saw that the desolate grave had appeared 100 meters away from him. Shoot! Han Fei trembled with fright. Damn, when did it come? Goodoo! Han Fei's face was dark. He had been observing it with his perception all the time. How did this tomb deceive his perception and suddenly pull it from hundreds of meters away to 100 meters away? Is it because I just shifted my sight? As the saying went, seeking death is a talent. Han Fei was no exception. As if to confirm his guess, Han Fei blinked again. This period of time was extremely short, so short that it wouldn't even affect his visual perception of the outside world. However, in the blink of an eye, Han Fei suddenly found that the desolate tomb was only about 30 meters away from him. At this moment, Han Fei felt cold sweat on his forehead and shouted in his heart, Old Yuan, what's going on? How could this tomb run? And he ran so fast. The old turtle said, This emperor has already told you. Although you can see it now, you should have already been eaten by it. What you're seeing now seems to be both real and illusory. Why don't you go in and have a look? Han Fei's lips twitched. You think I'm leaving? I can stare at it for 7 days and 7 nights without blinking. The old turtle. Sure enough, Han Fei stared at the tombstone for half an hour. Seeing that the tomb didn't move any closer, he let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, sure enough, as long as I stare at it, I'll be fine. But the next moment, he heard a gasp, which gave Han Fei goosebumps. That was because a crack suddenly appeared on the grave, and a gust of cold wind blew out from within. Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei felt a huge shadow in his heart, as if 10,000 iron-head fish were galloping in his heart. Hey, close it. Why did you crack it open? We don't know each other very well. Suddenly, he felt as if he was attracted by the void in the crack, and Han Fei wanted to take a closer look. However, as he looked, Han Fei was surprised to find that the crack seemed to be getting bigger. Wait, something seems wrong. Han Fei suddenly came back to himself. He was attracted by the crack just now and was stunned for a moment. Although his reaction was extremely fast, as soon as he came back to himself, he almost burst into tears, because at this moment, the tomb was just 3 meters away in front of him. Han Fei was shocked. You're so powerful, but why do you have to move forward when I'm not looking? Why don't you just do what you want to do? Han Fei took a deep breath. Although he was a little shocked, he was not afraid. At this moment, he was a little emotional and curious. What he was emotional about was the lack of girls around him. Otherwise, maybe the two of them would go in hand and then fly out as 2 butterflies. Fuse. Knowing that he couldn't avoid it, Han Fei thought he'd better use the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes. However, even the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes didn't work this time. Han Fei's eyes changed, but he quickly calmed himself down. What was fear and horror? Han Fei didn't know. With this emotional state, Han Fei stepped into the desolate grave. What entered Han Fei's eyes was a barren and even somewhat reddish soil. The wind here was dry and the wind was accompanied by heat waves. The soil under his feet didn't feel wet at all. The dust was extremely thick and a little red. As for the sky, there was no sky here at all. It was like a faint red, which could be seen very far. What big tomb? Han Fei looked around. This didn't look like a tomb, but more like a very primitive Gobi desert. In the distance, there was a dense red light mist flowing, which was the symbol of an array. Since Han Fei had already come in, he was no longer afraid and walked straight to the depths of the tomb. Chilla. As soon as Han Fei took a few steps, he looked down and found that his battle suit, which belonged to the Fish Dragon King, had been cut open. Han Fei, is the battle suit damaged? Wow. Han Fei took a breath. No matter how bad this battle suit was, it was still a low-quality divine weapon. How could it be damaged so easily? Han Fei continued to take a step forward and felt as if his arm had been cut by a knife. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see that as he moved, a red light knife brushed past him. Knife intent, Han Fei took a few quick steps, only to hear a hissing sound beside him. However, this level of power couldn't shake him at all. So, as he walked, Han Fei began to run. At this time, Han Fei could see countless red lights like knives slashing at him. It was just like when he was sprinting at the abyssal chasm in the level 3 fishery. But here, it was just the knife streams. He didn't know how long he had been running. Although the cutting power was not weak, it was not very strong either. It seemed that these knife intents hidden in the void were not deliberately set up. Instead, it was like air in natural existence. Even with the yin-yang divine eyes, Han Fei could only vaguely feel that this place was a little weird. When Han Fei walked past several dense red light barriers, he suddenly stopped. He saw several tombs. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched, and he suddenly turned his head to look at a dark corner slope, only to see a withered figure with long hair, dragging something in one hand and holding something like an arm in the other, gnawing it. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Damn, what kind of old monster is this? Fortunately, Han Fei's eyesight was good, and he found that what the sloppy figure was holding was actually a lotus root. Phew, I'm so scared. However, Han Fei felt that something was wrong. Was the juice of the lotus root red? Why? Was there red liquid dripping from the hair in the sloppy figure's hand? Suddenly, Han Fei saw that the thing being dragged by the figure moved. When Han Fei took a closer look, his eyes widened. Wasn't that the King Green Silk Spirit? Yes, the Green Silk Spirit was still alive and didn't even dare to breathe. Both of its arms were gone, and it was being dragged on the ground by the figure by its ankles. Only then did Han Fei remember that the Green Silk Spirit seemed to be transformed from a demonic plant and was good at using invisible threads. Thinking about the lotus root in the figure's hand, Han Fei seemed to have discovered something. This Green Silk Spirit turned out to be a lotus flower. Fish Dragon King, help me. At this moment, the Green Silk Spirit's voice rang in Han Fei's mind, sounding very scared. It seemed that the Green Silk Spirit had been eaten here for a long time. Before Han Fei said anything, he heard a hoarse voice, and the sloppy figure tilted his head and looked at Han Fei. Fish! Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He remembered the person in the mural and thought to himself, is this a human being? Han Fei hurriedly shouted, Senior, don't get me wrong. I'm a human being. I'm a pure-blooded human being. I'm a real human being. The Green Silk Spirit was almost speechless. Are you a King human being? Do you look like a human being except that you look a bit like a human being? You're just a fish. Why are you pretending to be a human being? The figure tilted his head again, looked at Han Fei again, and said in a hoarse voice with certainty, Fish. Han Fei broke out in a cold sweat. Don't move. I'll turn into a human being for you to see. At this moment, Han Fei didn't want to pretend to be the Fish Dragon King anymore. If he continued to pretend, he might be eaten. Chomp! The figure took a bite of the lotus root and looked down. There didn't seem to be many lotus roots left in his hand. So, he took another bite and stuffed the lotus root into his mouth. At the same time, he waved his dry hand, and the Green Silk Spirit's thigh turned into a large lotus root, which was grabbed by the sloppy figure. Han Fei, the Green Silk Spirit shivered. It's over. It's over. She thought to herself, it's fine if the Fish Dragon King didn't come. Now that he's here, the monster feels that there's more food and eats faster. And Han Fei saw that his appearance changed rapidly. His figure was slightly twisted, and his demonic chi was quickly dispersing, and his spiritual energy was quickly returning. The sloppy figure was slightly stunned by this scene, and the Green Silk Spirit was even more dumbfounded. What kind of technique is this? Han Fei quickly turned into a human being and then cupped his hands. I'm Han Fei, a pure-blooded human being with the bloodline of the human king. I'm an unparalleled heavenly talent of the human race. Second update. Asking for votes into this chapter. Chapter 1326. Han Fei completely transformed into his original appearance, not suppressing his strength and spiritual energy at all, and showed himself to the figure who might be dead or alive. The green silk spirit was shocked. Are you king kidding me? Han Fei can transform into a sea demon? Wait, the green silk spirit soon realized that something was wrong. The venerables and even the kings might be watching this battle. Even if Han Fei had the ability to transform into a sea demon, where did he do it? Even the kings didn't notice it? The green silk spirit's body trembled. It was not Han Fei who turned into the fish dragon king, but the fish dragon king itself was Han Fei. However, the Shuemu sky clearly saw Han Fei coming. The green silk spirit was confused again. Did Han Fei really have the ability to transform into a sea demon under the noses of so many strong masters? But whether the person in front of her was Han Fei or the fish dragon king, it showed that the other party was also frightened and accidentally wandered here. He even needed to transform into a human form to prove himself. But why did he transform into a human form to prove himself? Could it be that this old monster wouldn't attack him if he was a human? Han Fei was different from the green silk spirit. When he saw this desolate tomb, the first thing that came to his mind was the leader of the strong masters who fought against the dragons. After all, there were so many people, but there was only one tomb. Who else could be buried if not this big shot? Also, from the murals, it was clearly a battle between humans and dragons, and there was nothing to do with sea demons. He didn't even see the sea. This fully indicated that perhaps in that era, the sea demons hadn't grown up yet. Sure enough, when the person fell Han Fei's human bloodline, his throat made a few cracking sounds. Munch. The man looked at Han Fei while chewing a piece of lotus root, grinning from ear to ear. He was enjoying it so much that Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing. He had always been the one who ate other creatures as a feast. He couldn't allow other creatures to eat him as a feast. The figure seemed to be thinking and paused for 2 minutes. It was silent everywhere. As the saying went, opportunities were always in the hands of those who were prepared. So, with a shake of his hand, Han Fei threw out a serpent immediately. Solemnly, Han Fei pointed at the serpent and said, "Senior, you may not believe me. This junior has a premonition that we might meet a senior expert on this trip. That's why I've already prepared a large number of living beings to sacrifice to you. Look, this is the green-scaled flood dragon. Its meat is fresh and tender. Its muscles and bones are complete, and the flood dragon's gallbladder hasn't even been plucked." Han Fei carefully glanced at the changes of the figure's body, but he only heard the sound of the throat moving. No response. Han Fei waved his hand again, and a six-winged flying fish more than 30 meters long said, "Senior, this six-winged flying fish has the most tender wings. If you only eat the wing, it will definitely be a delicacy." Baji. As Han Fei spoke, the figure bit off another lotus root with a crunch, and his eyes flickered. Han Fei thought to himself, there should be some hope. Given such an opportunity, Han Fei threw out 17 or 18 of them at once. "Senior, I know you're not satisfied. However, in order to prepare the best delicacies, I've traveled all over the world. Look, this lobster with a blue shell is an exotic creature. Look at this 8-tailed golden carp, whose meat is the freshest. This mixed yuan core mussel with Shanghai willow juice is so delicious that my teeth are going to ache." Baji. The figure raised his hand again and smacked his lips. However, this time, he didn't put his hand down. He bit down again and swallowed the whole lotus root. The green silk spirit trembled all over, thinking that this monster was going to eat her other leg. However, the figure let go of her hand and then reached out to grab a scarlet octopus, dragging it beside him. Han Fei thought to himself, there's hope. Sure enough, this figure loved delicious food. Who? Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as you like to eat, There's nothing I can't do. However, before Han Fei dared to move, the green silk spirit wanted to escape with a swish. However, after she flashed for less than 100 meters, her last leg was suddenly grabbed by a big hand. However, she only saw that big, withered hand grab her again. Crack! Ah! With a soft cry of the green silk spirit, the last leg of her lotus root was pulled off. And the figure, with the octopus in his right hand and the lotus root in his left hand, still stood there, but his eyes seemed to have softened a little. Looking at the green silk spirit who was about to be eaten, Han Fei felt that his hands and feet were cold. He couldn't let himself be like the green silk spirit. Baji, 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 the silhouette ate the lotus root in one bite after another until it was all gone. In the midst of the green silk spirit's fear, he scooped up the green scale flood dragon from the pile of creatures that Han Fei had thrown out. The man stretched out his hand and took out the snake gallbladder that was bigger than a watermelon. Although the figure was just eating one bite at a time, Han Fei didn't even notice that this person was eating too fast. In just 2 hours, 3 of the creatures that he had thrown out, which were all 20 or 30 meters long, had already been eaten. Neither Han Fei nor the green silk spirit dared to speak. The green silk spirit really hoped that this monster would forget her. However, Han Fei saw that the figure's eyes seemed to be faintly bloodshot. He thought to himself, not good. His eyes had turned red. It couldn't be that his eyes had turned red from eating, right? Han Fei immediately asked cautiously, Senior, is it enough? If it's not enough, can I get you some more? The figure's mouth that was chewing suddenly stopped, his eyes flickered, and a gurgling sound came from his throat. Han Fei waved his hand again, and another 17 or 18 creatures were thrown out. He didn't dare to throw them all out at once, because he didn't know if this person would let him go after he threw them all out. Han Fei said, Senior, don't panic. I'm looking for more. I remember that I prepared more than one sea-swallowing seashell. So Han Fei exclaimed from time to time, Oh, Senior, I found 7 or 8 big sea cucumbers. This is definitely a great tonic and not easy to get. Oh, by the way, I also prepared dozens of aurora jellyfish for you, Senior. If they're cut into threads, they will taste crisp and delicious. Senior, I also have exotic starfish here. Their yellow aroma is tempting. Those who have eaten them all say they are delicious. As if by magic, Han Fei piled up 5 hills one after another, and a large number of creatures were placed in front of him. The green silk spirit was dumbfounded. Are you here to hunt for treasures or to hunt? You're looking for treasure and exploring an island. Why do you bring so many things with you? What's wrong with you? However, the green silk spirit was naturally happy. As long as this monster didn't eat her, everything would be fine. Although she was very sure that this Han Fei was definitely not the fish dragon king. So what? Even if they were enemies, so what? It was better than falling into the hands of this monster and being eaten. After all, the green silk spirit was also an expert on the heavenly talent list of the Baibei Royal City and could be said to rank 3rd. If he were to be eaten without knowing why, it would be too aggrieving. After throwing away a lot of things, Han Fei said slowly, Senior, maybe I came in a hurry, so I may not have brought enough things. But don't panic. I came in a hurry this time and didn't bring enough gifts. But Han Fei suddenly pointed at the green silk spirit and said, but there are still 40 or 50 of such sea demons outside. Some of them are transformed from flood dragons, and some are mutated giant octopuses. They all have the sun moon shells and eat a lot of treasures. Senior, do you think this is okay? I'll go out and hunt them for you right now. I guarantee that you'll be full. The green silk spirit's face changed greatly, and she cursed, Han Fei, I'm very valuable. You can exchange me for resources in the Baibei Royal City and take me away. Han Fei's face changed greatly. Hey, little sea demon, what are you talking about? I, Han Fei, am the commander of the human race. I fight sea demons and slay dragons for the greater good of the world. Why would I team up with you for such a small profit? Senior, this demon is slandering me. Senior, you can kill her directly to prove that I, Han Fei, am a righteous person. Chilla. As soon as Han Fei said this, he saw the figure turn his head and look at the green silk spirit, which stunned her. In the next moment, before the green silk spirit had a chance to react, the figure pressed down with his huge hand and crushed the green silk spirit. Hiss! Han Fei's heart trembled. Damn it, did you really kill her? What the F***CK? He was a prodigy who ranked highly in the Bai Bei Kingdom. How could he die just like that? Chomp! The figure took another bite of the Overlord squid and said slowly in an unintelligible voice, "Go away and slay dragons." The old turtle stared at him for a long time and thought to himself, damn it, could it be that such a dignified expert was fooled just like that? Suddenly, a gate of light appeared behind Han Fei. Han Fei shivered all over and cupped his hands, saying solemnly, "Senior, don't worry. I've made an appointment with my friends to meet here on the grassland to trap and kill those sea demons as a small gift for you. Don't panic, Senior. It'll only take a few days." With that, Han Fei straightened his body and tried to walk unhurriedly to the light gate in a few steps. Swish! When Han Fei stepped out, he looked back, only to see that the grave was already 1,000 meters away. Han Fei blinked his eyes, but there was no sign of the grave on the grassland. Han Fei took a shivering breath. Who? F***CK, I'm so scared. Third update. Asking for votes. Asking for monthly votes tomorrow. Into this chapter. Chapter 13:27. After coming out, Han Fei's body immediately changed. Han Fei turned back into the Fish Dragon King. Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, there's still something wrong with the heavenly secrets here, right?" The old turtle said, "Yes, that desolate grave should not have really left." Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Fortunately, there were still a lot of creatures in Forge the Universe, but he couldn't give them to them now. He had to wait until he recovered his identity and killed all the creatures in the grave. Also, when the Life Queen came, he had to explain the situation to her as soon as possible. Han Fei guessed that even the Life Queen didn't know about this desolate grave. So Han Fei released Little Black and Little White. Little Black was thrown into Forge the Universe to prevent future troubles, and Little White was kept by his side to stay alert at all times. Outside the island, suddenly, Chang Shui Qin's eyes narrowed, and he took out a jade slip with a cold look. It was because this jade slip had already shattered too suddenly. The green silk spirit is dead. Chang Shui Qin frowned slightly. There were 3 people on the grassland, namely the green silk spirit, the Fish Dragon King, and Tang Yu of the Blood Sea Divine City. In his eyes, the Fish Dragon King was trapped in a large array and couldn't be seen. And Tang Yu had actually lost his way when he was chasing Han Fei and also fell into an array. In the eyes of outsiders on that grassland, all 3 people were trapped in an array. But they were not in the same array, so it didn't make sense that anyone would die. Now that the green silk spirit suddenly died, Chang Shui Qin couldn't help but doubt it. However, a mere incomplete ancient array might have some power, but shouldn't be able to kill a heavenly talent like the green silk spirit. The Insect King seemed to have sensed Chang Shui Qin's movement and seemed to have guessed something. He thought that the Fish Dragon King was a fake, so it was natural for it to kill the heavenly talents of the White Shell Kingdom. Although he also saw that the 3 people seemed to be trapped in 3 arrays, the 3 people had indeed disappeared in front of him. The people had already disappeared, so the Worm King began to doubt whether they were really in the formation. Suddenly, the Insect King, Chang Shui Qin, and the others all raised their heads and looked at the sky. The thick fog was dissipating, and light penetrated the layers of clouds and fell on the grassland. Including the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor, they all frowned. The White Armor Emperor froze for a moment, then smiled. There's primal chaos energy descending along with the Taoist rhyme. To be able to cause a change in the weather, it seems like this person's great Tao is unobstructed and rather extraordinary. The Life Queen was expressionless because there was no one from the Shuimu heaven. There was no reason for her to be happy. However, Han Fei, who was on the riverside more than 2,000 kilometers away from the grassland, suddenly looked up into the sky. Han Fei seemed to be stunned for a while, and then he moved and quickly flew to the grassland. Originally, the Life Queen was only afraid that her purpose would be too obvious and highlight that grassland. However, the chaotic aura immediately gave the Life Queen an excuse. Han Fei had already been molded into the strongest prodigy of the Shumu heaven, so he naturally discovered the unusual movements in the grassland easily. In fact, Han Fei was not the only one who discovered the abnormal weather on the grassland. Within a radius of 5,000 kilometers, the clouds and mist were broken, and at least 20 people discovered the abnormal weather on the grassland in the west. Zhang Fei Zhang, Tian. What a powerful Tao. Yang Riyun was running toward the grassland. Although she was in a sorry state and her battlesuit was damaged, she was still running toward the grassland. Unlike the Yin-Yang heaven, most people didn't have a good understanding of Tao, so they thought it was a celestial phenomenon. However, those who lived in the Shumu heaven knew that this was not the case when heavenly materials and earthly treasures appeared. The power that came from the sky could only be related to the great Tao. However, the great Tao wouldn't come suddenly, so someone might be comprehending the Tao. But why was that person comprehending the Tao? Was there something unknown on the grassland that could help people comprehend the Tao? That was the key. If one could comprehend the great Tao, they would have a chance to become a venerable. That was what these heavenly talents really wanted. In the center of the storm, Han Fei was looking up at the sky and talking to the old turtle. No, I didn't. I've already comprehended it. Is it the girl who chased me just now? The old turtle shook his head. It shouldn't be. This person seems to be comprehending the Tao too fast. At the beginning of the great Tao, there was already chaotic qi. This is definitely not a minor Tao. Han Fei's face darkened. But there was no chaotic qi when I comprehended the Tao. What? Is my Tao a minor Tao? However, he heard the old turtle say, that's not the same. You've even comprehended the Taoist seed. Do you think the chaotic aura can compare to the Taoist seed? Your Tao should be more powerful than this. Han Fei was relieved to hear this. I knew I had a Tao seed. Hearing this, Han Fei was immediately confused. If it wasn't him, the green silk spirit had also died. Could it be that Tangyu just now? Or is there someone else on this grassland? However, he felt that something was wrong, because the place where the light fell was a bit like the place where the barren grave disappeared just now. Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Old Yuan, do you think that figure just now hasn't recovered his strength? Is he just bluffing me? The old turtle said, there's no need to bluff you. Although that person may have decayed and existed for who knows how many tens of thousands of years, he is definitely a super strong master. Even I couldn't see through this person, which shows that this person's strength is definitely not to be underestimated. He can't be someone who hasn't entered the Tao, but what? The old turtle said, this may not necessarily be someone who has entered the Tao. The chaotic qi is descending, and although the Tao aura is also descending, it may also be returning. I guess that maybe you gave him too much food, and now his strength is beginning to recover. Wow. Han Fei immediately took a breath. I didn't give much, less than 200 creatures, half of which were below the Tao-seeking realm. In the end, Han Fei's voice became lower and lower. It seemed that he did give too much. There might not be much spiritual energy, but there was a lot of energy. Moreover, those who could catch his eye all had some ability after all. For such a strong master, it might be enough for them temporarily. Just like the old turtle, who didn't even have a body, he could kill a semi-venerable. Now he had Gue Sanqing's body. Although he had never seen Gue Sanqing exert its true strength, Han Fei felt that he could use it as a venerable in a real crisis. This power lasted for about half an hour. Less than half an hour after this power disappeared, Little White suddenly kissed Han Fei on the cheek. Dad, someone is coming. Han Fei raised his eyelids. Do you know him? Little White hummed and said in a childish voice, there's something familiar on him. Han Fei's eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, is it the smell of the 10,000-year big red trunk? It's that piece of wood. Little White should be quite familiar with the 10,000-year big red trunk. He had used it too much before, and even the library of the Thug Academy was built with it. Little White rolled around and wagged its tail. Yes, it's a piece of wood. Han Fei's heart immediately did a flip. That's great. Han Fei was overjoyed. The Life Queen had finally arrived. He was about to be liberated. Han Fei was about to ask Little White to take the initiative to find her, when he suddenly saw a figure in red leisurely in his field of vision. That person was holding a long knife. It was Tang Yu. Han Fei was speechless. "Why is it you again?" Tang Yu frowned. She had lost him when she was chasing Han Fei just now. Although this person was not very strong, he couldn't be underestimated. She was a little slower than him. However, she had to find a way to kill him. After all, he was her mortal enemy. Tang Yu shouted, "This time, you can't run away." Swish! Swish! In an instant, one of them wielded a knife, and the other moved horizontally. Han Fei sneered. "You want to kill me? Wait until you can catch up with me first." Han Fei moved his feet, taking advantage of the chaos here, crossed a kilometer in a step, turned around, and stabbed out with the god-stunning spike. And Tang Yu was also not afraid of soul attacks, so she counterattacked with spiritual piercing. Bam! Their minds collided, and both of them felt dizzy, and there was a violent explosion between them. Cough! Tang Yu snorted, thinking that the strength of this fish dragon king seemed to be a little stronger than before. Gemini Divine Technique. Han Fei was waiting for this opportunity. Because the Gemini Divine Technique could only be used for a limited time, Han Fei used it as soon as he came out of the tomb. At this moment, Little White had already sensed the Life Queen's arrival, so she naturally had no scruples. But in the blink of an eye, Han Fei split into two, and the white mist immediately turned into a human. After turning into mist, Han Fei was no longer in human form, so he could turn into anything he wanted. And the black mist that Little Black turned into couldn't be seen by ordinary people at all. That was the principle that light couldn't be reflected by the naked eye, so Tang Yu didn't see two Han Feis at all from beginning to end. Han Fei quickly retreated to the Life Queen in the form of white mist while sneering. "Tang Yu, right? If you keep chasing me, don't blame me for killing you." Chapter 1328. Tang Yu naturally wouldn't be threatened by Han Fei. After all, as far as she knew, although the Fish Dragon King was extremely strong, it was still weaker than her. On the grassland, Han Fei was using the closed distance technique crazily. And Tang Yu seemed to be on a rampage, with a red mist spurting out of her body. This feeling was a bit like Xia Xiaochan's when she was on a rampage. If he guessed right, this woman's personality should be a bit similar to Xia Xiaochan's. The two of them crossed the grassland, like two phantoms smashing the grass and leaves on the entire grassland. If the picture was slowed down, one would see that Han Fei was as elegant as an immortal, using the fish dragon dance step. His figure was strange, and he could cross 1,000 meters with one step. And Tang Yu raised her knife and slashed, energy gushing out. Every slash was like cutting wheat. In an instant, thousands of meters of grassland were smashed. This scene was extremely beautiful, but it was also filled with great terror. Han Fei thought to himself, "Cut. If you can, just keep cutting. The existence of this dead spirit grass is to serve the one and only Almighty. If you cut down the entire grassland, just like that guy just now, I don't believe that he won't eat you." The whole island was not big. This grassland covered an area of more than 1,000 kilometers. But on the grassland, space seemed to be changed, and it was easy to get lost. Therefore, people would feel that the grassland was extremely big. However, the grassland was only so big. Since the Life Queen was here, how could Han Fei not find it? In Tang Yu's eyes, the Fish Dragon King was fighting with her. However, close to the ground, in the air waves caused by their battle, a black shadow that was almost non-existent was also rushing at an extremely fast speed. Even if Little Black wasn't so black, ordinary people wouldn't see it. Han Fei, who used the Gemini Divine Technique, inherited the same characteristics. The battle between the two seemed to be extremely fierce, but in fact they only cut down a large piece of grassland. Suddenly, Tang Yu swept his gaze around and saw a figure standing in the grassland with a smile on his face. Han Fei. Immediately, Han Fei and Tang Yu separated, both of them as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The newcomer was naturally Han Fei, the insect man. Everything was going according to plan. Therefore, Han Fei had been leading Tang Yu here. The Life Queen, you're quite fast. This place is chaotic, yet you were able to find me so quickly. Han Fei didn't have time to chat with the Life Queen, so he replied directly, 2 things. There was an ancient, desolate tomb in this grassland, and there was a dragon slayer expert inside. Was it a corpse or a living person? I've stalled him for the time being. The second thing is that the black fog beneath your feet is mine. Bugman Han Fei's expression remained unchanged, but his heart was in turmoil. There are tombs on the grassland? How come I didn't know? Different from Han Fei's thoughts, the Life Queen's first thought was that if there was really a place that she couldn't find, it could only mean that the hidden existence was at least stronger than her in terms of strength. It was definitely above the level of a king. In other words, he had borrowed the power of the formation. However, judging from Han Fei's tone just now, could this ancient existence slay dragons? What kind of expert was this? What method did Han Fei use to stall him? At this moment, she didn't feel any residual Taoist aura from Han Fei or Tang Yu. That meant that the chaotic energy and Taoist aura that descended just now didn't come from these 2 people, but had something to do with that tomb. The Life Queen suddenly took a breath. You mean someone is reviving? Han Fei nodded. Yes, that person should be a human. But now is not the time to talk about this. As he spoke, Han Fei held the knife in one hand and looked down, but he didn't see anything at first. However, as soon as the Life Queen thought of something, Han Fei's black fog body was discovered. The Life Queen was a little surprised. What kind of technique is Han Fei using? Is a misty avatar? But why do I feel that there's a trace of Taoist aura on this black fog? Han Fei said, Now, can the outside world see what this grassland looks like? The Life Queen nodded. I can. Allow me to give the Fish Dragon King a chance to leave. Maybe because Han Fei and the others fought very far away, or maybe the desolate tomb could easily envelop Han Fei and the others again. The outside world could see them at this moment. From the beginning of the battle, just now, in the eyes of outsiders, Tang Yu first left the array, then met Han Fei, and then fought again. Of course, during this period, some scenes were hidden. For example, Han Fei disappeared for a while. It could be said that even the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor couldn't see through the mystery of this grassland. And at this moment, Tang Yu, Han Fei, and the Fish Dragon King met. In the eyes of a group of venerables, these people were the representatives of the 3 forces. According to common sense, under such circumstances, it was difficult for them to fight. After all, in terms of strength, Han Fei should be the strongest. However, in their cognition, even if he was strong, his strength should only be limited and not too exaggerated. In fact, they didn't know that Han Fei's strongest state had already reached the semi-venerable level. Han Fei shouted, Tang Yu, let's put aside the grudges between us. Let's join hands and deal with Han Fei together. Tang Yu narrowed his eyes slightly and didn't speak with a cold face. On the long knife in his hand, demonic energy was rolling as if he was thinking. Han Fei smiled lightly and said, Tang Yu, Shuemu Heaven and the Blood-Sea Divine City have never fought. I don't want to kill you, but this Fish Dragon King will die today. If you want to, you can join hands. If you don't want to, you can leave or watch the show. If you join hands with him, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Tang Yu was slightly taken aback. If I watch the battle, aren't you afraid that I will attack you? Han Fei grinned. If you want to attack, you can come at any time. Hearing this, Tang Yu's heart trembled slightly. This person is so arrogant. He even ignores my existence. He is not afraid that I will join hands with the Fish Dragon King. This also means that he has absolute confidence that he can kill me and the Fish Dragon King. As a heavenly talent, Tang Yu also had his own pride. At this time, he was very dissatisfied. After all, this Fish Dragon King has a big grudge against me. Watching him being killed by others, but I can only watch from the sidelines and can't do anything. Wouldn't that be admitting my cowardice? What's the difference between that and insulting me? Tang Yu said coldly. The Fish Dragon King has a big grudge against me. I also want to attack. Why don't you and I join hands? Han Fei's white mist body immediately shouted, "Ridiculous! Tang Yu, you and I are equally strong. If I die, you will be his next target." Han Fei looked at Tang Yu and said, "Me? I don't have a problem with that. If you think I will kill you, you can leave now." He had to admit that the Life Queen had portrayed Han Fei's temperament to perfection. It was even a little higher than Han Fei's. Although she spoke in a soft voice, her temperament was full of arrogance. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was taken aback. "Damn, this acting is really awesome." Tang Yu grinned. "Kill. Swish." At the moment when Tang Yu rushed out, Han Fei used the closed distance technique to escape. He chose to escape first. After all, he had to pretend. Han Fei's speed was no slower than the closed distance technique. When the Insect Queen gave birth to this insect man, the Life Queen had specially told the Insect Queen to focus on speed and convenience. God's stunning stab. Knock on the heavenly gate. Han Fei burned 200 years of vitality and attacked with all his might. His strength suddenly soared. Seeing this scene, the Life Queen was speechless. She couldn't help but say to Han Fei via voice transmission, "You burned your vitality, but didn't I get it to you? Is vitality free?" Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. "After all, I have to act." Han Fei said, "It's okay. I have other ways to make up for it." Anyway, Han Fei's soul was missing so much. A mere 200 years of vitality was nothing to him. When he absorbed the soul, he could also steal some vitality back. It was the best of both worlds. Han Fei, who was burning his vitality, looked very strong. He even blocked the draw technique. His movement technique shifted in the void as if he was dodging the void lines. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. The Life Queen's imitation is so good. She can even imitate my void lines? Although he could feel that these threads were different from his void lines, it at least showed that the Life Queen had noticed him before and noticed the existence of the void lines. The three of them fought as they walked. The Fish Dragon King was fleeing, and Han Fei was chasing it quickly. To Han Fei's surprise, the Life Queen also knew the Heavenly Void Divine Walking Technique, which really shocked Han Fei. The Closed Distance Technique and the Heavenly Void Divine Walking Technique appeared at the same time, and the two figures flickered across the grassland. In less than 100 seconds, Tang Yu suddenly withdrew her knife. She didn't want to kill the Fish Dragon King anymore. She just wanted to catch up with the two of them because they were too fast. In the outside world, Chang Shui-Qin frowned. The Fish Dragon King had tried to soar into the sky 3 times, but it was directly smacked down by Han Fei before it could reach that height. Chang Shui-Qin couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It wasn't that the Fish Dragon King was weak, but that Han Fei was too strong. In fact, when Han Fei challenged Zhang Xiaotian in the Baibei Kingdom, he didn't use his full strength. At this moment, after using the Gemini Divine Technique, his strength was only about 70% of before. However, because he burned his vitality, he could replenish some of his combat power. At this moment, Han Fei was almost fully exerting the Fish Dragon King's close distance technique to the extreme. If he was any stronger, he would have exceeded the growth limit of the Fish Dragon King in a short period of time. Even so, the Fish Dragon King played by Han Fei was still bombarded by Han Fei. Bam! Han Fei blasted a big hole in the ground. He lifted his feet and flew a kilometer in 1 step. The Bugman, Han Fei, waved the draw technique and was about to hit Han Fei, but the latter used the closed distance technique again and pulled away. The battle outside was very intense. In Forge the Universe, Yuan Dao stood in front of the Fish Dragon King, holding 3 red balls in his hand, which made the Fish Dragon King's blood freeze. The Fish Dragon King roared, "Han Fei, what the hell do you want?" In Forge the Universe, Han Fei's voice sounded leisurely. "You don't want to eat them?" "Fish Dragon King, now there are only 2 paths for you to choose. 1, you die, and after you die, everything will be white. The other, you eat these red balls. After eating them, with your talent, you will become a top heavenly talent in the Bloodsea Divinewood City. You will also be a heavenly talent, and you also have the possibility of becoming a venerable. My time is limited. I will give you 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, The fish dragon king's face was twisted, and he struggled. Is this what a F** king human should do? Han Fei added me. By the way, after eating them, you have to give me a strand of your essence, blood, and soul. What are they for? You should know. Think about it. As long as you can survive, everything is possible. Think about it.